Welcome to the Rolling Forward podcast, a podcast where of people who keep rolling forward no matter what life throws at them. Real people, real stories, powered by purpose, resilience, and a drive that never ends. There's a corny joke to that last part, and I haven't yet talked about it on the podcast, but maybe we will. I'm Zach Sikora. Spina bifida didn't stop me. It just gave me a better excuse to sit down while taking over the world. Today's funny shirt is a guy in a wheelchair saying sit to a dog and a dog saying walk to the guy in the wheelchair. So I wear these every single episode. I wear some sort of funny shirt. Jake loves them. No, but yeah, so that's my funny shirt. Unfortunately, I did not create this one. I did get it on Amazon. But if you want to grab one of my shirts, you can go on to rollingforward.printful.me. If you've got a funny shirt idea, throw it in the comments. The funniest might make it into the shop. Now, let's roll into today's episode with Jake Counts. And Jake, I have been very excited to have you on the podcast. I've known you for a long time. You've been a good friend. It's funny, we've taken road trips together and we've talked the entire time. I think it was like eight and a half hours that we talked. And you have led a life that's just like amazing for the disabled sports community, amazing for the disabled community in general. So like you're a basketball Paralympian. You've now started a program at UC doing wheelchair tennis, wheelchair racing, hopefully expanding on more players. And it's awesome to have you on. So what did I miss? Fill in the gaps there.
I think you hit a lot of it, and I appreciate you having me on, by the way. But yeah, from a player to coaching the Cincinnati Dragons are our local like high school team. So I've been really involved with that for the last 10 years. And then this past year, starting UC Adaptive Athletics.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so can you share a little bit more about your background? Maybe even like get into your injury and how what happened and why you're in a wheelchair and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you like the quick elevator Jake Counts pitch. But I'm actually from Covington, Kentucky. So I grew up in this area, and when I was 13, I was walking home from school with some buddies, and I tried to hop on a train and ended up falling is how I became an amputee. And this was in like 1993. So I had this accident, and it was really fortunate to, be in a community that I went to elementary and middle school in.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a pretty good social support network
Mm.
as like a newly disabled person trying to navigate that. And I also like won the family lottery. So my parents were just like rock solid. So I had a lot of the tools I would need to be successful
Yeah.
right out of the bat. Especially I think being a middle school, high school kid and, having that group of like 15 to 20 friends,
Mm.
people already knowing you, made the kind of social component a lot less challenging. One of the things that was missing though is, like a lot of kids before I got injured, I played basketball and baseball and soccer and football and was pretty much playing sports all year round. And then to go from that to like not playing any sports was
Mm.
probably the most challenging thing.
Yeah.
Really.
How long did it take before you got into wheelchair sports?
When I got injured in 93 and in 99, actually I was up at UC for a football game and some random guy was just like, "Have you ever heard of wheelchair football?" And he connected me with John Kramer, who's
Mhm.
a UC employee and runs a wheelchair football program now, but luckily he also did that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So I got connected with those guys and started playing wheelchair football, which is a super fun sport, but also like really recreational.
Mm.
Uh, but the main thing there was that John was able to connect me with Jim Rackett, who was running wheelchair tennis in Cincinnati at the time. So that's probably the first competitive sport I got exposed to.
Yeah.
And then there was an adult team called the Cincinnati Slammers
Okay.
that were like a D2 or Division 2 or Division 3 adult wheelchair basketball team. So
Okay.
I started playing with them, let's say in like January of 99, like right in the beginning of 99.
Yeah. Okay. Explain to the viewers who don't know what D2, D3 are.
So in the National Wheelchair Basketball Association, the NWBA, there's an adult division and there's three three different divisions. D1 being the most competitive, the second division uh, being somewhat competitive but not as much, and then the third division uh, being more like your local guys hanging out, shooting
Mm,
some hoops, or brand new teams with all like a lot of developing players.
sure. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna get into a rapid fire. I'm just gonna ask you questions that hopefully you can answer either with one word or a sentence or something like that. And then we'll get into a little bit more about adaptive sports and your involvement. And yeah, so okay, so the first one is team sports or solo sports,
Team sports,
wheelchair tennis or track,
wheelchair tennis.
coaching or playing.
Coaching
Okay.
after you've played.
Okay. After you played, yeah, that's fair. You got to get some
Age
experience under your
dependent.
belt. Yeah. Okay. 3 words that teammates would use to describe you.
uh, Intense, supportive, uh, and hardworking, on time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
What about your players?
Ooh, that's a tricky one to get in the mind of like a teenager.
Yeah.
Mean, smart, on time.
Okay. All right. I like it. Hype music or chill music before you play?
Hype music, really at any time ever.
Okay. Yeah, I've roomed with you, and you'll have hype music on
Yeah.
as we're getting ready and stuff like that
Right.
in the hotel. So, basketball playmaker or shooter?
Playmaker.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, so let's get into adaptive sports and your involvement. So you shared a little bit about how you got into tennis, and basketball and stuff like that. So actually, let's back up for a quick second because we got into knowing each other through adaptive sports.
Yep.
So I don't know that I remember when I was a kid meeting you. Like I knew your name and I think we went to a few things with like Jim Racket and stuff like
All
that.
right. Yep.
Is that kind of your recollection of how we met?
I think either that or potentially in like the wheelchair basketball ranks.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
because I believe you were probably a senior or a junior
Yeah.
while I was in college and a little more plugged into like what kids were coming out
Right. Yeah.
and who a potential recruit was or what kids were at camp.
Uh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, okay. And then I took a break from like pretty much wheelchair sports in general. And it was funny because your I think it was your boss at the time saw me out in public somewhere and
yeah, I think it was Ian Smith, the man who knows everyone.
yeah.
But yeah, I think he saw you out and just, he's a big supporter of like the Dragons and kind of
Mhm.
what we were doing to kind of restart wheelchair basketball in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
so yeah, he saw a guy in a wheelchair and
yeah,
started recruiting.
and he actually asked me, he goes, "Hey, do you play have you ever played wheelchair basketball?" I'm like, "Yeah, I actually used to play it a lot back in the day." So, yeah, and so then we got reconnected through wheelchair basketball, and we both obviously live in the same city now, whereas before growing up, I was in Columbus, you were in Cincinnati, really northern Kentucky. But
Mhm.
yeah, and then we played basketball a little bit together, and then you coached, played, coach, something like that. So
Yep.
yeah, so okay, so let's say this. Let me ask you this first. Why do you care so much about the adaptive sports space?
I think I know that before I played sports, just kind of that element of competition and something that you could do that was physical, uh, that was also like really worthwhile and kind of structured where these different like tiers and accomplishments you can get to.
Mm,
Uh, and just having that like sense of team and community. I think that was missing in my life, kind of like those first 6 years
yeah,
after I became disabled when I
yeah,
really wasn't playing any sports.
yeah.
Um, and then once I regained that, uh, it really just like kind of turned my whole life around and led to like a ton of different opportunities.
Yeah.
Uh, and I had a blast. I mean, I've really, I don't know if it's just the way I'm wired. I can't honestly remember a time in my life where I wasn't genuinely enjoying myself.
Mm,
Uh, but I know like playing wheelchair basketball kind of maximized that and really just led to some awesome opportunities.
yeah.
So it's really afforded me a ton. Uh,
Mhm.
it's almost hard to describe. Besides the fact that like games are fun to just
Yeah.
spend your time like playing a game and
Yeah.
working on a craft that, at its core is fun is a pretty good way to spend your time on earth.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so what is a story that you can share that's if you have both, great. If not, great. But a story from playing and then a story from coaching.
Uh, quick playing story. Uh, I was probably 7 or 8 years into my career. I was getting pretty decent, but I wasn't really great at that point.
Can I ask where you were?
Uh, in the story,
Yeah, were you in college at this point?
it
Or?
was my first year after college,
Okay.
and I was playing in Bayreuth, Germany
Okay.
for a pretty rough like European club team.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had another teammate, Leor Jor, who was just a stud, really good guy. But it was basically him and I.
Mm.
And I was just coming out of college, and the German league was like pretty physical league, and
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I was all about it. I thought it was great. But we were playing Zwickau, who I think came in second that year, and our team finished up third.
Okay.
Landale and Zwickau, the two top teams, we were never able to beat them. But we were playing Zwickau, and they had some really like tough, old, grizzled veteran players. But I remember they had this Polish guy called Pullman who was like super tough and like covered in tattoos and elbow pads and wrist pads and goggles
Yeah.
and probably about 45.
Was he
Uh,
tall?
pretty big guy, notoriously dirty.
Okay.
And he's actually a really, really nice guy. He's a cool dude to hang out with. But at
Yeah.
the time, I didn't know him.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
we were going at it the whole game.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the game, it was pretty apparent we were going to lose by like 5 points, where it's kind of like last 10, 15 seconds. You don't really have that, can't make up that many points in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So his team has to shoot to not get a shot clock violation.
Okay.
So I go up for the rebound, and I feel Pullman's elbow digging into my ribs. But I end up getting the rebound. And I'm just like, man, I'm going to get this guy. So I kind of threw a little chicken wing back at him. And then he went to like ram me or something. He went to retaliate.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw out of the corner of my eye that my teammate Leor was already down the court with the ball. So I was like, I'm just going to dip on this guy and get this layup real quick. And it's not going to mean nothing, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I run him for this like last second layup, get the ball, go to shoot this layup, and then just go flying. Because Pullman had chased me down, going to get his retaliation on my retaliation, and like clip back of my wheel and like flip me over. So then the game's over at that point. The ref's not calling a foul or whatever.
Yeah.
So I hop up real quick, and he's like rolling away. So I shove him in the back and flip him over.
Oh,
and then it's like pandemonium. All the benches come out. Everybody's like fake tough guy acting like they're going to fight, but no one actually fights.
Yeah.
But at any rate, my German coach, who was very proper and like very German, was just like yelling at me like, Jacob, you can't do that in this league. And I looked at Nikolai and I was like, Nikolai, you can't do that in any league. That's my funny player story.
That's awesome. Okay, so for an able-bodied person listening to this that just heard you say you fell over, he fell over, and then you just got back up in your chair, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so in wheelchair basketball, your chair is kind of more akin to a prosthetic, I'd say, than a chair you're sitting on. So it's pretty attached to your body, and there's a number of different straps where if your body goes somewhere, your chair is going with you. And kind of flipping over, either because you're balancing on one wheel to reach higher, or you're just wrecked, whatever the case may be. Falling over is a pretty typical part of the game.
Yeah.
So one of the things you have to be able to do is just basically use your body to push back up. And if you fall over, no one's going to stop the play until you get up. Your team's just going to play 4-on-5.
Right.
So after Pullman flipped me, I was able to like hop up pretty quick.
Yeah.
In a matter of a couple seconds. And after I shoved him over, he was able to pop up pretty quick. But it's I'd say falling in wheelchair basketball is pretty typical of like
Yeah.
falling in basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes 99% of the time you just fall, you get back up.
Yeah.
Every now and then maybe you'll sprain a wrist or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Sure. Have you had any like really bad falls where you have broken something or sprained something?
No, I've been lucky. I've never really broke or sprained anything. I've had some lacerations in my head, I think 3 different times that like required some stitches, but like
Oh, dang.
2 or 3 stitches, nothing like crazy,
Okay.
anything like that.
Yeah, I didn't sprain or anything like that, but I did have one where I fell out of my chair and my knee, and I can feel my knees. My knee landed on the back of someone's spokes, and it was the other team, and they I was like, hold on, let me get up, and I tried to like it was the play was dead and all that, and like
Right.
this guy just pushed forward, and it just
Yeah.
ripped a layer of skin off of my knee. So
Right.
yeah, I think I still have a scar from that. So, um, okay. So what about so that's playing. Do you have
Mhm.
one coaching?
Uh, nothing nothing really funny or super entertaining comes to mind.
Sure.
Uh, but, I'm I usually am good for about a technical a year.
Yep.
And to be honest, not this past season, but the season before was the first year in like however many years of coaching or playing that I like went an entire season and didn't get technical.
Nice.
So the last tournament was the women's nationals tournament. I was coaching the Cincinnati Dragons women's team.
Yeah.
This year, I almost repeated until our last game, and I called a timeout with such enthusiasm and vigor
Mhm.
that the referee teed me up.
No.
What actually happened was I was trying to call a timeout while we were getting pressed. And I was just calling a timeout actually because I wanted a timeout. The
Mhm.
ref thought I was calling it to stop a turnover, which we did ended
Oh.
up turning the ball over while I'm calling timeout. So
Mm.
then he's looking at me like, you didn't get it in time. And I'm like, so what? Timeout? Probably not quite as politely.
Yeah.
But he ended up like trying to show me up and, you know, look into his teammate or the ref he was reffing with, and he kind of looked at her like, are you going to handle this or am I? And then he's like, I'll handle it. And he goes over to the table to like report the technical. At that point, I already had my team in my huddle,
Yeah.
and I was just refused to engage with him, and I was running my timeout.
Yeah.
But he did try to like show me up and show me who was boss. And there was probably only 3 or 4 minutes left in this game, and we were getting blown out, so
Mm.
it wasn't really meaningful.
Okay.
But the thing he failed to calculate was I had another timeout. So at this point, the whole gym is watching us, and they're just like, "Oh man, what is Perm up to? Like
Yeah.
getting technicals."
Yeah.
So with about a minute left in the game, I called my last timeout, and I got to wait till everyone was quiet and be like, "Sir, may I please have a timeout, sir, if that's okay?" So I actually got to show him up at the end a little bit.
That's
But
awesome.
with that said, even the original technical probably warranted.
Yeah.
I can't think of too many technicals I've gotten that I didn't deserve.
Yeah. So okay, so how many years have you been coaching basketball?
I have been coaching the Cincinnati Dragons junior wheelchair basketball team since 2014. Sometimes as in the under 14 division, which we call prep.
Yep.
Sometimes with our varsity team, which is our high school team.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the last 3, we just completed our 3rd year. For the last 3 seasons, I've coached the women's Dragons wheelchair basketball team.
Nice.
And then prior to that, I would, a lot of times I really enjoyed working camps.
Yeah.
So if my alma mater, UW Whitewater had a camp, I'd try to work that. Or if I had a friend that was holding a camp, try to get involved at coaching through that. And then coached a couple years right out of college at University of Alabama. I was the
Okay.
assistant coach
Okay.
for the first 2 years of their men's program.
Uh-huh.
And it was right when I got back from Germany, and
Mhm.
I was a bad coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I was real intense and like hard on my teammates in
Yeah.
a good way when I was their teammate.
Yeah.
Kind of brought that same mentality into coaching,
Right.
but you don't have that like bond of this is your buddy who
Right.
like believes in you, and even if you're yelling at them, they know you got their best interest at heart. So I think I
Right.
ended up just being like this 26-year-old guy screaming at him.
Yeah.
Uh, So
Huh.
it really, yeah, I coached for a couple years there and didn't mind it, but was also just kind of like, I don't think I'm that great at coaching.
Yeah.
And then kind of seasoned a little bit, got a little older, started working
Mhm.
with like some younger kids and
Mhm.
had to kind of hone my craft to where now when I coach high school kids, I think I can bring that intensity
Mhm.
with also making sure that they know, like, they're cared for, they're safe, they trust me.
Yeah.
Even if, it has to be like negative reinforcement or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot I learned about just, positive reinforcing like positive behaviors and kind of being an example of that while
Yeah.
also being intense.
Yeah.
But it took a minute to learn that.
I think what I've seen from your coaching style, and I'm curious what how you would define your coaching style is you are a super genuine person with everybody that you're around.
Mhm.
And if someone does something that you don't approve with, you're not afraid to call them out and say, "Hey, that wasn't good," or "Hey, let me walk you through the right way to go," and stuff like
Right.
that. And then, um, I think that's valuable in a coach. Like you need that
Right.
sort of accountability. And I think one of the things that I got just in general from wheelchair sports growing up was that whole like being coachable and
Right.
being held accountable for things that I did when I didn't have my gear and my equipment properly done,
Right.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, and it's important for kids with disabilities to be in a space uh, where they can be genuinely successful,
yeah,
but then are also like really held to like a real standard.
hmm
That doesn't always, there's not that many opportunities for them, to be honest, unless you
yeah,
just lucked out and had like the most amazing math teacher in eighth grade or your parents were just super dialed.
yeah,
So a lot of times I think it takes someone in wheelchair sports to kind of,
yeah. And you kind of go through the world in a wheelchair with oftentimes being coddled by able-bodied people.
right,
Sometimes that's a parent, sometimes that's a close family member. Hopefully, it's not the parent, but I mean,
right.
unfortunately, we see it
Yeah.
more times than not. But
And it can just be a grab bag of weird, like inauthentic interactions.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe it's coddling, maybe it's just ignoring, maybe it's like
yeah,
super uncomfortable, maybe it's like making fun of, whatever it is, it's just
mhm,
not really that like genuine where there's
yeah,
a real exchange and someone like holding you to a standard. So
yeah,
I know coaching wise, there's always like a standard of like the minimum.
yeah.
And if you fall below that standard, it has to be addressed.
Right.
If it's not below that, I might kind of pick and choose whether
Sure.
I address it or not.
Of
But then
course.
there's always that line. Is just like,
Yeah, it's like, no,
you leave me no choice.
don't cross that line. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I wanted to go back to you playing basketball in Europe real quick. So there's a pretty big difference between basketball in Europe and basketball in the US. Can you explain that a little bit? And what I mean by that is like there's just seems to be a lot more club involvement and stuff like that and more
Yeah.
support around that.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. I think just, comparing like US to European sports in general, I think a big part of it is there's no NCAA,
mm,
there's no high school sports.
mm,
So these like lower levels of sports to the community, like I'm a Covington Holmes High School graduate, and I love checking out the Bulldogs on a
yeah.
Friday night, even
Yeah,
even now, you
yeah,
know? So
yeah.
that's kinda my free little, like, my city entertainment. That
Okay.
doesn't really exist in Europe, but what does exist is a lot of athletic clubs that
Yeah.
might have different team sports. You might have
Mhm.
a basketball club or a volleyball club. Of course, soccer is kind of one of the main drivers of that
Yeah.
model.
Right.
But because that model, it's a lot easier to kind of integrate,
Yeah.
an athletic club. Sometimes it's an athletic club that already exists, and it's just like, cool, we'll add wheelchair basketball.
Right.
Sometimes it's a club that forms up around like adaptive sports or wheelchair basketball. But that idea of kind of community and sponsors coming together so that you have some local sports to watch,
Mhm.
uh, it's a lot less foreign of a concept. Where
Yeah.
if you and I, take disability out of it, if
Mhm.
we're like, hey, we're going to start a soccer club right now in Cincinnati, it's not like we can get into the eighth division of
Right.
Italian soccer,
Right.
but you could if you're in Italy and you
Right.
start at the bottom and try to work your way up. And
Right.
so
Interesting.
I think that's probably one of the biggest differences.
Yeah.
By contrast, their youth wheelchair basketball is a lot less developed than ours.
Okay.
Uh,
Huh.
I don't know. it's getting there though. It
Yeah.
really is. And when you look at some of their like under 23, there's a world championship in wheelchair basketball men's
Yeah.
for under 23.
Mhm.
Women's is under 25.
Mhm.
But when you look at those European countries on that stage, they're competitive and better or on par with the U.S. typically.
Yeah.
But I bet if you did like a 17 and under, they'd be in a little bit more trouble.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. So sounds like there's pros and cons of both, but in my opinion, it like just from what I've heard you say in the past and all that, sounds like Europe has a better setup, or
Uh,
would you disagree with that?
I think with wheelchair basketball, when you look at like the top divisions of wheelchair basketball, and I think it's a little bit more Spain and Germany now,
Mhm.
but Italy's usually in the mix.
Mhm.
Turkey
Okay.
usually has some good clubs.
Okay.
Uh, but when you look at European wheelchair basketball at the highest club level,
Yeah.
it's pretty much in Europe, and that's in large part because these clubs are operating with bigger budgets. They're more accustomed to like bringing talent in,
Oh.
like bring in either foreigners from
Yeah.
a lot of times it comes down to the European Union,
Right.
either bringing people in from outside of the European Union, or even getting other athletes in Europe. And
Mm.
I know the I've played on several clubs where it's probably almost half,
Yeah.
if not more, of foreigners
Yeah.
to Italian players. And then I think the last club I played in Italy was like the Yankees of Italy.
Yeah.
So what they did was just got all the best Italian players,
Cool.
and
Okay.
then a couple imports.
Right. Right.
Uh,
So okay. So what are all the countries that you've played in?
uh, I have played on every continent except Antarctica and Africa,
Okay.
and I'm still just kind of like peering for an excuse to go to Africa. There
There you
was
go.
there was a wheelchair tennis trip going to Africa, and they needed coaches, and I
Oh,
was so close to applying.
interesting.
But I had a pretty chock full summer.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I'm always kind of looking for a chance to get over to Africa.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've played on every continent. I've lived in. I played a season in Germany. I
Yeah.
played 2 seasons in southern Italy, and then
Okay.
3 seasons in Rome.
Okay.
So 6 seasons just totally being overseas playing.
Okay.
But then I played with Team USA for 5 years,
Okay.
which was some different like either world championships or qualifying tournaments or
Yeah.
friendly tournaments. So got to do a lot of travel from that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the juniors that you coached.
Mhm.
How I know the answer to this, but I'll ask for everybody. Like, what's the best you guys have done? And
Oh, so the Cincinnati Dragons have been around since 2014. Man, I would say how many graduates we've had, but I'd be scared to get it wrong.
okay,
Uh, but we've had I know we've had 2 athletes already graduate from college from our program. One of which played at University of Arizona,
mm-hmm,
which is Kerwin Hackey.
mm-hmm,
You know Mike, his father. So that's probably the best achievement we've had is always when we graduate kids from high school
yeah,
and then they go on to college.
yeah,
But then even better if they go on to college to play wheelchair basketball. And then
mm,
even a step better if they're like heavily recruited and getting some scholarships and that
yeah,
opportunity is possible because of the Dragons.
right,
That's honestly like the best success. But then team success, we won a national title in 2023. I want to say
sounds about
22,
right.
23, right around then.
Yeah,
Which is a pretty good accomplishment. There's usually between maybe 50 or so high school teams in the country.
mm-hmm.
So pretty good one to win that. This last team I just had just finished up in the top 10,
Nice,
which is awesome because there's not. I think the first year where there wasn't even, or the second year where there wasn't even a starter
yeah,
from that championship
yeah,
team. So it's kind of fun to see this like new batch of kids kind of like making a name for themselves and moving up the ranks. So
yeah.
and they're all together for this next year coming up too.
That's awesome.
But there's been some pretty good team success,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that, to be honest, is more a luck in the draw than coaching.
Sure.
I'd say like you're only going to be able to do so much with the players you have.
Yeah,
So I got pretty lucky to have like a good group of kids that were all like in high school at the same age.
yeah.
And still, I think we won that championship game in overtime.
So
Still almost lost it.
yeah, yeah, that's fair. I'm gonna push back on the luck thing.
Mhm.
I think I think, yeah, sure, you get lucky with different kids and the talents, but,
Mhm.
like, how many kids do you have in your program right now?
Uh, right now, I wanna say there's over 20 right now if we look at, like, our under 14 team and
Yeah,
our adult team.
and to
And
recruit that and to build that
yeah,
culture, that
yeah,
takes some work.
yeah, that takes a lot of work, and
So
it takes a village.
the luck is something
Right.
that you've done and you've
Yeah.
gotten other people on your side to help you
Mhm.
do, and,
Yeah,
uh
I think you're thinking about it opposite, though.
well, go
Like,
ahead.
I'm always a top level excellent coach.
Yeah.
Just every now and then, you get lucky and you get those
That's
teams.
fair, that's fair. Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm with you though, and yeah, coaching's really fun. It's interesting, and I think anyone who's coached a lot will know this. Man, some years when you get those developing teams, or some of those years where you go into it and you're like, cool, we're not winning the national championship this
Mhm.
year. Uh, when a team like that does well and excels and kind of goes above where you think they're going to go, those
Yeah,
are the most rewarding years for sure.
yeah.
When you're good and you're supposed to win, it's pretty nerve wracking.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
it's a grind.
That's fair, yeah.
So.
Okay, so talk to me about wheelchair basketball versus able-bodied basketball, and what are some of the differences, injury levels, 2 bounces or the 2
Mhm.
push rule, all that?
So, as far as tactics, if you're really like, if you're a hoop head,
Mhm.
in transition, the games are fairly similar
Yeah,
to a degree.
yeah.
In the half court, it's almost a totally different sport.
Mhm.
And a lot of that's because you're taking away lateral movement.
Mhm.
If you can control someone with your chair position, you just deny them that spot.
Mhm.
So, if a coach, able-bodied coach is like, hey,
Yeah.
you're going to come off this pin down and then pop out to the corner. And
Mhm.
wheelchair basketball, you might not be able to do that because you just literally can't move around somebody. So that's one of the big differences. So a lot of the team concepts are very different. A lot of the individual skills aren't super different though.
Yeah.
Shooting, you use a little bit of different form and different technique. Passing is pretty similar. Dribbling is relatively similar, except the dribbling rule is pretty interesting in wheelchair basketball. There's no carrying or double dribble. So you
Mhm.
can palm the ball, you can hold it, you can pump fake and then dribble again. You can do whatever you want.
Mhm.
But you do have to take one dribble for every 2 times you touch your wheels. And those two
Mhm.
touches might be 2 pushes, or it might be like stopping a wheel or pivoting.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's probably the biggest like skill difference.
Yeah.
Uh, Otherwise, it's relatively easy to, if you know basketball, you can watch wheelchair basketball
Sure.
and have a good idea what's going on. And if you're really into basketball, you kind of start to see the role that pick and rolls play.
Yeah.
The difficulty of staying man to man as
Mhm.
opposed to switching. It's almost always like switching defense. So
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
wheelchair basketball definitely turns into a chess match, and it reminds me a lot of like NBA playoffs are going on right now.
Yeah.
Like when you see the different matchups
Mhm.
coaches are in, and where one little adjustment can be huge if the other coach doesn't make a counter adjustment.
Mm.
Uh, so those are the big differences of wheelchair basketball and basketball.
So one of the things I've noticed with wheelchair basketball is you have, I mean, with disability in general, you have so many different kinds of disabilities. Some are paralyzed from the waist down. Me, I can
Mhm.
walk a little bit. You have full trunk control, but you're just missing your
Right.
legs. And
Yep.
then you have people who maybe are paralyzed from like the chest down and have a lot less
Right.
balance and stuff like
Yep.
that. And one of the cool things that I think you've done really well that I've seen is, like, you're able to use the players that maybe can't move their chair as fast or move around to,
Right.
like, pick and roll and, like,
Yep.
man, the ways that those players are able to just know what they need to do to be effective on the court
Right.
is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think I left out like one of the biggest differences between wheelchair basketball and basketball.
Mhm.
So for every adaptive sport, what you're trying to do is get a group of people together with similar levels of ability, and that can make for a good competitive sport.
Yeah.
So whether it's like CP soccer or wheelchair basketball or track and field, whatever it is, you want people of similar abilities competing against each other.
Yeah.
So with wheelchair basketball, it kind of serves this scale of maybe someone is a below the knee amputee, wears a prosthetic all day,
Mhm.
never even uses a wheelchair till they hop in
Mhm.
their basketball chair to play basketball,
Yeah.
all the way down to someone who's like a fairly high level paraplegic. So what
Mhm.
they figured out is that that's not like an even matchup. When one
Mhm.
person's using their entire body, the other one's, using a certain percentage of their body. So they
Mhm.
came up with a classification. And based on your disability and kind of your range of motion and your range of function, assign you a point value, and it
Mhm.
goes 1 to 4.5, and it goes by half point increments. And then of your 5 players on the court, all those numbers can't exceed 14 points.
Mm.
So what it does is if you have like your 2 giant hairy amputees that are using their whole body, they're both 4 5s. So
Mm.
that's taking up 9 of your 14 points. So between those other 3 players, you only have 5 points to spend.
Mm.
So you need some class ones that might be like higher level paraplegics. So it kind of it in one sense it levels the playing field, but really what it does is it creates like skilled positions,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, where there's a different set of like fundamentals you have to learn. And a different set of attributes you need.
Mhm.
And that's really neat because then you get someone that maybe doesn't have as much function, but they're
Yeah.
always in the right spot.
Yeah.
They're always controlling the floor. So taking a lot of those, just my appreciation for like those lower point players, or just a way a
Mhm.
team, as many different jobs as you can do when you're playing chess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been a big benefit as far as a junior coach.
Mhm.
Because I could look at a kid and look at their ability and be like, all
Yeah.
right, cool. So here's some skills you can implement. Here's some things you can legitimately do to
Right.
affect the game.
Right.
I've had some really good players that like were probably, if they shot 50% from layups, we'd be lucky.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're out there really impacting the game and helping a really good team
Right.
win,
Right.
just by being smart, being fundamental. So
Yeah.
to me, that's one of the beautiful things about wheelchair basketball.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think all adaptive sports should
Yeah.
strive to achieve. You see some developing sports without classifications.
Right.
And I'm always like, well, that's great for the people with all the higher function. But
Mhm.
then if you're not one of those people, you're kind of left behind. So
Yeah.
it's,
So
it's tricky. You need a deeper pool to do that.
yeah.
You need a successful popular sport to be able to.
Mhm. So I think that's a good transition into tennis
Yeah.
because tennis only has really two different
Right.
classifications, if that, at
hmm
tournaments.
Right.
So for everybody that doesn't know, there's a quad division and a paraplegic division, and the quads can play in the paraplegic division if they want to.
hmm
But some tournaments you might have one or two quads come, and so then the quad can't necessarily play in the quad division.
Right.
So
Yep.
it's interesting because I think one of the fundamental differences in tennis is it's really hard to be a high level injury and be competitive with
Right.
some of the people that have a lower injury.
hmm Yep.
I mean, yes, there is a quad division in the Paralympics, and then there's a
Right.
paraplegic division in tennis. But one thing that I noticed in the Paralympics that this past go around was there were quads, and quads is three or more limbs impaired. So
hmm
you can have your full trunk control. You can just be missing some fingers and some toes
Right.
and play quad tennis.
Similar thing happened in quad rugby. So it's kind of
Mm,
interesting times for those 3 limb impairment sports.
yeah,
Luckily, quad rugby has a classification system that kind of helps balance
that's
things out.
awesome.
Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I
but
read Randy Snow's book. Had to have been 20 years ago now, but
mhm,
was advocating for at least another division then,
yeah,
and not even that he wanted to be in the lower one. But I see it a lot when I'm, our buddy Jaime Mazzi
yeah,
is a paraplegic. We're both older dudes. We're both learning tennis.
yep,
But every now and then I'm able to just fold all the way over and lean all the way out
mm,
and get this ball that he's not even going to have a chance to get.
right,
And all those points kind of add up. So
right,
it's always balance, right? Do you have enough players to support those different
right.
divisions? Is there a will to do it?
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, our Cincinnati tournament, we've had anywhere between 20 and 40 players,
mhm.
and if you break it down by experience level, you've got C, B, and A being
Mhm.
the highest
Right.
experience level, and so then if you break that down to a different division,
Right.
that you just have like what, three or four players in each segment, and then
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, I'm coming to Cincinnati and I'm only gonna play a couple people. Like that's no fun.
Right.
So it is a conundrum, I think, from a tennis perspective.
Yep. It is a little tricky. I'm surprised there isn't some second little
Yeah.
delineation in there.
Yeah. I
Yeah, kind of like Randy Snow was talking about 20 years ago.
yeah, I am too. I just I haven't heard somebody say like a good solution to that.
Hmm.
Like I mean, for example, like if you're a quad and you're coming and there is a quad division, then you can play like three different divisions. And what that means is you can play quad singles, you can play C singles, and then you can play doubles, or you could
Hmm.
play two doubles and then a singles. So you can
Right,
play cross divisions and stuff like that. And that might help spread the wealth
right, right.
if we do that. But then when it comes to entering into four divisions, let's say, or more,
Mm.
then you've got to account for court time and like how much that player's on the court, when they can play, their opponent
Yep.
playing, all that. It's
Yeah.
just it gets really complicated with the draw and all
Absolutely.
that.
I'm fairly. This has been my first year, kind of
Mhm.
dealing with the USTA and ITA, and United States Tennis Association, and an Intercollegiate Tennis Association.
Yeah.
Uh, so easy to work with and like well put together that I think wheelchair tennis is really poised for some like exponential growth.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's the answer. If you
Mm.
deepen your pool, it makes it a little easier to get people with similar abilities playing each other.
Yeah.
And I would think that at the core of it, that's kind of been the hesitancy all
Yeah.
along at one point. It
Yeah.
just comes down to a numbers game.
Mhm.
But I think those governing bodies are I think doing their parts. So then it comes down to like programmers like you and I making
Yeah.
sure we're getting people involved and getting people playing. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's happening.
Yeah.
It feels like it's happening for
I'm on
being a year in.
yeah, I'm on the USTA Midwest section board,
Mhm.
and like we're definitely making some movements, and I think the Midwest is one of the biggest in the countries from a
All right.
wheelchair tennis perspective, and we're trying to spread our wealth, and I mean we're even trying to get like adaptive, so like able-bodied player, no, stand-up players, pair standing is what they call it.
Mhm.
We're doing our first ever tournament here in Cincinnati that's also pair standing and wheelchair combined.
Nice.
And so that'll be pretty awesome to see. So, and then we've got a few pair standing players that we actually play with. So,
Nice.
and then blind and visually impaired and all that. You know, it's so new that I hope it gains traction, but
Mhm.
like so far it hasn't gained a lot of traction
Right.
around the U.S. I think there's just a handful of different blind and visually impaired tennis around the United States.
Right.
So and we're one of the front runners. So
Mhm.
anyway, so real quick before we get any more into tennis and where we're at, where you're at now, um, your disability and how you got in a wreck, can you share that?
Yeah, yeah. I try to hop on a train. I'm a double amputee.
Yeah.
Is my disability.
Okay.
My right leg is below the knee. My left leg's above the knee.
Yeah.
I pretty much use a wheelchair all the time. I
Mhm.
got this little like kind of stump shoe and some
Yeah.
super short crutches.
Yeah.
If I ever need to really like ambulate around, uh, I have a plan for that. But yeah, primarily I'm a wheelchair user though. When I was younger, I wore prosthetics like every day for like 6 or 7 years,
Okay.
and I just remember feeling a lot of pressure from like
Yeah.
society, friends, family. Like everyone was like, "Man, if you get good at walking on these prosthetics, then it's like we don't even gotta worry
Yeah.
about your disability. You're gonna look just like us."
Yeah.
But what I found out was that I really had, well, what I knew at the time, but I didn't want to let everyone down, was that I
Mm.
had less ability walking on prosthetics, that I
Mhm.
could physically do more things using the everyday chair.
Yeah.
And then kind of once I started playing like wheelchair sports and went to college, I was kind of like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
putting these prosthetics in the closet and I'm never getting
Yeah.
them out again. Now, a little disclaimer though, I mean, everybody's different. I know amputees that I play wheelchair basketball against that have very similar amputations to mine.
100%.
Never use a wheelchair except when they're playing tennis.
Yeah.
If you saw them, or except they're playing like basketball or sports, and
Mm.
if you saw them out and about in a wheelchair, you would like want to help them.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Is that
Yeah.
person okay?" So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's a little different, but I think sometimes as a society we automatically put a premium on walking when it's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
you know, we're not like hunter gatherers anymore. Like, what is ability exactly?
Yeah.
Like,
So something I haven't shared on the podcast before
mhm,
is I was on crutches up until 5th grade.
mhm,
And when I was in 5th grade, I had a surgery and it put me in a wheelchair for a couple weeks. And when I was in that wheelchair for a couple weeks, I realized that I could carry my own lunch tray at
Mhm.
lunch. And I realized that I could actually keep up with my friends
Yep.
because like if we're running down the hallway, like and I wasn't keeping up, someone could just push me and help me keep up and stuff like
Right.
that. So I'm with you. And again, everybody's different.
Mhm.
But I'm with you, and the wheelchair definitely has made me more independent
Right.
than
Yep.
less.
Yep.
So, and you know, we're pretty athletic from the standpoint of, and I think this is another blessing of wheelchair sports is we can go down and up curbs, we can go down,
Right. Yep.
we can maneuver almost any terrain if we really
Right.
needed to. So, and I think for me, I wore leg braces for a while, and then finally somebody was like, a couple people I was playing tennis with, they're like, "Why do you always wear leg braces?" And you know, I took them off, and I like forever stopped wearing them. So
Right. Right.
now that's not to say that I do think if I wore leg braces every so often, it would help me
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's interesting the stigma almost that everybody puts on you for you should be walking and stuff like that. So
Man, if, the amount of time and effort and just money and resources
mhm,
was put into every kid to really, like, get dialed and really learn how to maneuver a wheelchair,
yeah,
as opposed to, like, get used to walking on this, like, walker with braces up to your elbow, and
yeah,
maybe one day if you do that, you'll be able to, like,
yeah,
carry a pencil while you're walking.
yeah, yeah, right,
So
exactly.
it's
uh,
it's
so
kinda interesting.
so let me ask you this: what advice would you give to a parent with a child of maybe a new disability or even one that has spina bifida like me and they haven't heard this stuff before?
Mhm. Uh, I would say figure out figure out spots that you can, like, challenge and kinda hold your kids to a standard,
Mhm.
and, and let yourself and your child learn that it's, like, alright to fail.
Yeah. Oh
It's
my
almost
gosh, yes.
better for a kid to try something and figure out, like, "You know what? I'm not at that level of independence,
Yes.
and I failed at it."
Mhm.
So that way you get right up to that edge of, like, could you do it or not? You
Right.
figure out where that edge is, but then you also maybe you give yourself an opportunity to maybe learn some adaptations or learn how to get to that next hump. But, like,
Yeah.
gotta be alright failing a little bit, and it's tough. Nobody wants to. My daughter doesn't have a disability and is 7, and, like, if I see her struggling to put her shoe on, I'm like, "Come here, let me." So
Yeah.
it's tricky, but that's, I think, a big part of it is just being comfortable with that, and,
Mhm.
like, and being comfortable with the fact that life isn't fair, and, like, there's
Yeah.
some things your kid's not gonna be able to do, there's some things they are gonna be
Yeah.
able to do, but your time of, like, having a hand in that is limited.
Yeah.
Should be limited, is hopefully limited.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I would say is one, get them involved in wheelchair sports
Yeah.
because when they're around other people in wheelchairs,
Yep.
they almost get held accountable in a different way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That it's like they're almost um they realize what maybe they can do with able-bodied people and get away with. They
Right.
can't get
Yeah.
away with that with
Yep.
disabled people.
Yeah,
Um,
and it works the other way too, where they're gonna be able to develop social skills where they're in a
yeah,
setting where no one's treating them different,
yeah.
so they can learn how to be cool and carry on a
Mhm,
conversation. And
mhm.
it's not as much pressure as, like, all right, you're gonna learn how to interact with a bunch of peers that are, like, weirded out by you anyway, and
Yeah,
you're gonna have to break that ice, and that's gonna be all on you with no practice beforehand.
yeah,
You're never gonna be around 15, 20 other people that are just you get to be a normal person in that space.
right, yeah.
Like,
That's so valuable.
parents, think about if you went through your life and you were never once like everyone else in the room.
Mhm,
Not one time. Like,
mhm.
I would make my little kid go play wheelchair sports, whether
Yeah,
they wanted to or not. If not now, it's just for a social aspect.
yeah,
And at, like, those younger ages, no one
mhm.
don't matter if you're good or not. My
Yeah,
job as a coach is to, like, give your kid a place to, like, hang out and do something fun.
yeah,
And as
yeah,
long as they're not, like, lighting a fire to my practice plan. I'm going to be good with whatever they do.
Yeah.
As they get older, like in high school, middle school, things get a little more competitive, but that's true of all kids in sports.
Yeah.
So until someone tells me a space where a disabled kid can come and not be different,
Yeah.
then I think they should be playing sports.
Yeah.
And, once you get like your all disabled kid art class,
Yeah.
and again, it doesn't matter about what they're doing. It just matters that you're providing like a good positive space where
That's so
they
true.
can not be different.
Right. Yeah, and like, I mean, there's definitely private conversations that you just don't want to have with able-bodied people
Mm-hmm.
regarding, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of different things with disability and stuff
Right.
like that. And I heard somebody say once, and they're talking about old people, but I think this applies to disabled people too. Is something like, um, don't do what they themselves can do, something along those lines. And what the thought process of that is like, if they can do it and you're helping them out, you're almost robbing them of that independence and that
Right.
almost self dignity
Yeah.
that they wouldn't get otherwise, if that makes any sense.
It's almost like you don't want to help them till it's not that big a deal if they do it.
Yeah. Oh, I like
Because I
that.
might look at you and be like, "Hey, Zach, can you hold this chair while I get in my car?" And that's
Yeah.
because I know I can keep that chair under control when I get in my car because I've done it 100
Uh-huh.
times.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
so
like,
true.
wait to help till they have mastered the skill, and then, throw
Yeah.
them a bone, help them out a little bit. That's just what humans do for each other to be, efficient and
I love
a
that. That
cohesive unit.
that is good. I'm gonna clip that, and I'm probably gonna just remember that quote because
Right.
that was good. Okay, so let's get into where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
So you are on the board of the bridge.
Yep.
Let's start with that. What's the
Yeah.
bridge? And
So, I'm super proud of the bridge too, and I wish I could
me too.
I can't take much credit for the bridge, to be honest. But yeah, I'm one of the founding members and a board member on the Bridge Adapted Sports and Recreation,
Yeah.
and the bridge is primarily a lot of doctors and therapists and professionals in the medical community
Mm,
that were seeing the benefit of adapted sports.
yeah.
So then these super smart people are like, hey, if we can streamline that and get people from like when they're getting these medical services,
Mm-hmm.
especially with kids or when someone, has like a traumatic injury as they're going through rehab, if we can directly connect them with adaptive sports and recreation, we're going to like eliminate a million steps there.
Yes.
So that's one of the core tenets of it. Another one is like research and kind of furthering the knowledge of adaptive sports and benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is providing people with equipment, making sure people have the equipment they need for adaptive sports and recreation, because
Yes.
that can be a huge barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say the fourth pillar is programming, where
Mm.
they're hoping to expose people to different sports. So the bridge will
Yeah.
have a group go kayaking, and then the culminating event is doing Paddle Fest. Or we just did the Flying Pig 10K. So there
Yeah.
was about a 2 or 3 month lead up of like
Mhm.
biweekly hand cycling lessons to get
Mm.
ready for the 10K. They have they got this little crew of these kids are awesome, and they're athletic. They're getting better at soccer, but they play CP soccer, cerebral palsy
Mm.
soccer. So they're all running around playing soccer, but then they're all kind of on the same playing field.
Yeah.
But their CP soccer squad is like just growing by leaps and bounds, and you can see his kids' confidence. I've been on the bridge, though. I was like, we need a name for those kids. So I'm going for Cincinnati Cobras.
Ooh, okay, okay.
And just because it's a cool name.
I like it.
'Cause
Yeah.
no one wants to be like the Bridge Adaptive Sports and
Right,
Recreation
right.
Butterflies.
Yeah, yeah.
I see so many teams in like the youth disabled sports field that are like, the MRIH2 Rehab Institute
Mhm.
Cubs.
Yeah,
It's just like,
yeah.
man, can't they just be Cubs?
Right, yeah.
Do you really
gotta
need
get
that little
brand.
plug there?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
your brand will be all right.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah, so the bridge is super awesome. Kind of born from the pandemic. Uh, just hopping on like Zoom calls
Yeah.
once, twice a week for
Mhm.
eternity, it felt like.
Mhm.
But then came out of the end with a really cohesive plan for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And now they're just killing it. And
Yeah, they
every
are.
so often, I'm like, man, I don't know how much bandwidth I have. Do you guys still like, if you need someone else to like take my board spot? And
Yeah.
they've been good enough to be like, yeah, you got the sports rep, so we're going to
Yeah.
keep you for now.
Yeah, right, right.
At some point, we'll start producing enough athletes in Cincinnati to where I'll get
Yeah.
pushed out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's when we'll know we have made it.
Yeah, so one of the things that I really appreciate with the bridge is from the Cincinnati Tennis Foundation perspective is they came across a whole bunch of tennis wheelchairs,
Right.
and
Yep.
now our kids are using the bridge tennis
Right.
wheelchairs
Yep.
and stuff like that. And then the other cool thing is so there's really and maybe you can name more, but I think there's two sports that have been around for a while. There's sled hockey and wheelchair
Yep.
basketball in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And then wheelchair tennis started in 2019,
Mhm.
2018, something like that. And so the bridge will find people and send them
Right.
our way
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
if they're interested. They, of course, do their own
Mhm.
activities and
Yep.
events, and they're kind of like a catch all for
Right. Right.
almost every other
It's
Cincinnati sport.
it's a great like entry spot.
Yeah.
Whenever uh, whenever someone asks me,
Yeah.
I might tell them about the dragons or the icebreaker sled hockey.
Yeah.
But I'm always like, hey, just go to the Bridge Adaptive website, see what they have going on. So yeah, they did a great job.
And then we do once a year. We've done this. I think this is the third or fourth
Mhm.
year that we've done this with them. It's a tri day. So
Yep.
we've done wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, and sled hockey.
Yep.
We've mixed in pickleball here and
Right.
there because it's just as easy to
Yep.
use to do that with tennis. And we're doing that again this year
Right.
for the third year in a row. And we actually today we just had a meeting and
I didn't make the meeting. At about 5:20 a day. I was like, ah,
yeah.
but my cohort Mike Hackey had my back.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right.
Work pulled me away, so I
Yeah.
couldn't be on there long. But one of the things that was thrown out was doing like a camp, like a 2 or 3 day
Mhm.
long camp, and
Right.
that's something that I'd love to have
Right.
because I remember as a kid going to those wheelchair camps and like I remember you remember
Yep.
Lee Montgomery,
Yep.
that camp in Michigan that was like all sport and stuff like that. It was just so fun to try the different sports and like
Mhm.
bond with other people, other disabled people and all that. So
Yep.
I want to make that happen for Cincinnati because I like
Mhm.
in Cincinnati has the manpower. We have the mindset.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We have everything to be able to do that. The
Yep.
talent. I mean,
Yeah.
shoot, you're a Paralympic basketball coach, and we have a lot of other talent elsewhere. So
Yeah, we really do. We're positioned well for that. So it's fun when you get into adaptive sports too, because there's always kind of like that next little step and that next thing
mhm.
you can do. So
Yeah,
we're also lucky in Cincinnati. We have a community that really like supports us,
yeah,
and there's funding there for good ideas.
yeah, yeah.
So I've always been kind of amazed just by the people in this city and the support. Like I've never had an idea that I've had to be like, man, we can't afford that.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
as good ideas come up, I feel like there's people that step up to kind of
yeah,
take
yeah.
that on and make sure can be a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so anything else that you want to mention about the bridge?
Uh, nah, I think the bridge
Okay.
is awesome. It's super fun, and I'm really proud to be a part of the bridge for sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into UC tennis. UC tennis and track, I guess, right
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah, yeah,
Can you get into how that came about and
yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of the bridge members are either doctors or therapists or teach at UC. So there was a lot of connection there,
mhm.
and my friend Victoria, Dr. Heasley,
Mhm.
probably about 3 years ago, was like, "Hey, I'm gonna start an adaptive sports program at UC. Are you gonna run it?" And I was just like, "Yeah, Victoria, sure." And kind of thinking like, "All right, whatever." Uh, and she'd bring it up you know, every 6, 7 months,
Yeah.
to make sure I'm in. But then this last spring, uh, she started calling meetings with people from UC,
Nice.
and Heidi Pettyjohn, who's the director of accessibility resources, who's my direct supervisor now or my boss, she hopped on one of the early meetings and was just like, "This is awesome, I'm in." And then she kind of hopped in with Victoria as that staff member that would kind of take it on and give the
Mhm.
program some place to be housed. And then from there, we've really just had some great support from the university. So this started in about June, and we got some funding to get us through the first year or so.
Mhm.
And Jack Miner from UC Admissions hopped in and really helped us out, like kind of be competitive in that, like scholarship space. Dr.
Mhm.
Mayo from Student Affairs, which Accessibility Resources is under,
Yeah.
hopped right in, like, what can I do to help? So it's been a lot of people at different departments from like athletics facilities to student resources that have really kind of stepped up and seen what they can do to help us,
Mhm.
get a new program off the ground.
Yeah.
So we just wrapped up our first fall and spring semester, and
Yeah.
we had 4 student athletes playing wheelchair tennis. We went to a tournament at Michigan, a collegiate tournament, one in Alabama.
Mhm.
Went to the ITA championships in Orlando,
Yep.
and really accomplished a lot more in a year in tennis than I thought was,
I
like
100% agree.
right.
Like at those tournaments, I mean,
Mhm.
people are saying like, "Wow, you guys have improved pretty massively," and it's
Right.
I think a lot of that is thanks to your dedication as just like a basketball coach and knowing what it
Right.
takes to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
You guys are playing 4 days a week in the morning, and
Right. Yep.
then you're also joining my practices here and there.
Right. Yep. And then I
At least once a week,
mhm.
sometimes twice. So,
Yeah.
um,
And that's kind of, we brought, our buddy Jaime, we brought Mozzie,
mhm.
who's an older guy our age, never finished his degree. I talked him into coming back to school.
Yeah,
But the nice thing is you get someone that has like that Paralympic background, but also that collegiate sports background.
yeah,
So when everyone else is a brand new player, me and
mhm,
Mozzie are brand new players. But when I throw out the idea, hey, we're going to practice like every day,
yeah,
your best player don't be blinking eyes is like, yeah, we're going to practice every day.
mm,
To where if you get, our other athletes are fairly new to wheelchair sports and
yeah.
to a degree. So,
They've gotten really good in
yeah,
just a
yeah,
matter of a
yeah.
couple
Yep,
months.
absolutely. Because even though you're a new program, the more things you can kind of set that standard, the more things that are under your control
Yeah,
that you can set up to be like at the
mhm,
level you want to get to.
yeah,
And then, so yeah, was really happy with wheelchair tennis this year. We got a couple
yeah,
recruits coming in next year
cool.
that will also be like new developing players.
Mm,
But then my hope is we kind of get that program firing on all cylinders so that we can start, recruiting nationally.
mm,
And I think admissions is behind us on that plan. So that's super
nice.
exciting, and especially, adding opportunities for,
Potential scholarships and
right.
full rides, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm not
I
gonna
know,
say too
I know.
much, but
Yeah, I don't want to jinx it.
yeah,
But yeah, we've got just tons of support from the university.
that's
So I
awesome.
think that program will have some legs and can really be competitive nationally
Mhm.
in short order.
Yeah,
I think we have a lot of the building blocks in year one that some programs are still fighting
right.
to try to achieve.
Mhm.
Uh, and then track and field. So I knew a little bit about wheelchair tennis coming into it. I
Mhm.
had played tennis.
Mhm.
Coaching has been a challenge. I'm asking you all the time about this, like little fundamental things, just to try to be able to pretend I'm coaching.
Mhm.
Track and field is like that times 10. I've
Yeah, I
never
bet.
pushed a track chair in my life.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a slower burn. But since this spring, we've also got 4 athletes pushing track and field, and
Nice.
kind of the same deal. Now that we're getting into track season, same thing, 4 days a week.
Yeah,
We're on it, getting some road work in the weekends.
great.
Had some athletes do the Flying Pig 10K. We're
Mhm.
going to our first collegiate meet at University of Alabama Friday. We're gonna
Oh,
drive down
snap.
there. Yep,
Good luck.
we're heading back to Tuscaloosa.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
so yeah, and a lot of us is kind of getting into it, and it's kind of neat with these all brand new players.
Mhm.
So a lot of YouTube, a lot of me talking to other coaches, just
Yeah,
trying to get a clue.
yeah,
Uh, but I think that's another program that'll be set up to be pretty successful. We've got
yeah.
two recruits coming in next year as true freshmen.
Mhm.
Uh, and then also the other universities have been super helpful.
That's
I know
awesome.
Alabama inviting us to our meet where I'm like, hey man,
Mm.
we're all brand new, like two
Right.
months new, and they're just
Right.
like,
Just
bring,
come.
bring it.
That's awesome.
You're never gonna be ready till you're ready. So come
Yeah.
on with it. University of Illinois has like summer track camps. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to weasel my way in there and be like, do you guys need any help?
That's awesome.
And trying to see what I can learn.
Yeah.
It's been super humbling getting into 2 new sports and not knowing anything,
Yeah.
because I've been able to move in like the wheelchair basketball circles for 15, 20 years, really know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah.
and kind of having that resume, and
Uh,
to have to go from like
yeah.
that to less than nothing to people
Yeah.
looking at you like, how'd you get this job? I'm
Yeah.
like, because I was the one willing to coach 2 sports
Oh,
that
right,
I didn't
right,
know.
right.
Uh,
By by the way, I did do wheelchair racing from like 10 to
mhm.
12. So if you need any
Yeah, yeah,
pointers,
yeah.
no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
You're probably better off asking those
Right, right.
other schools.
Yeah.
But no. So okay. So what you played basketball your entire life,
Mhm.
and then you went to UC, and the first two sports that you picked were tennis and
Yes.
racing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Ironic, isn't it? And really the idea is, we're hoping to develop that program, to have basketball.
Yeah.
And I think at this point too, I think like women's collegiate basketball would be a good
Mm,
place to start.
okay.
Uh, that's not quite as developed as it should be, to be
Uh,
honest. And we're just cranking out high school women that are
yeah.
like great athletes.
Yeah.
So I think that might be the next move, really.
Okay.
But in theory, looking down the road, like to have a men and women's wheelchair basketball program. But
Yeah.
at the same time, we got some funding in June for a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
A basketball team is, we have 5 total athletes now. So you had 2 basketball teams, you'd be looking at 4 times that. So I didn't feel we were really positioned to like start with basketball
Yeah.
and also just like individual sport.
Yeah.
So so my hope is that like our wheelchair tennis players and our track and field athletes are kind of paving that way,
Mm,
so that hopefully grow the program, get someone who's a tennis specialist, get someone who's a track specialist,
yeah.
get a basketball team so I can be a specialist again.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah. Yeah.
would be ideal, but
Right.
it's been fun too. I've been playing a lot of tennis and
Yeah.
hopping in learning how to push a track chair and doing some road racing and stuff. So I didn't really imagine like pursuing different like athletic paths at
Yeah.
45,
Yeah.
but it's kind of played out that way.
It is really cool to see like you and Maz, who are
Hmm.
Paralympians, pick up tennis. I
Yeah.
mean, you've played before,
Right.
but
Right.
it's been a
Yeah.
minute. And seeing you kind of like your mindset and like
Right.
when you do play, your competitive
Right.
nature,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's also fun to see like you and Mozzie play doubles together, because like you're always strategizing, you're always
Right.
thinking
Yeah.
of like different things to do, and like you're kind of if I could use the word uncouth when it comes to you're not the traditional tennis player,
Right.
let's say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you'll do things like charge the net, and that might
Right. Yeah.
surprise people,
Yeah.
or like you do this this side slice serve that
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny. You always say Hadouken
Right.
whenever you do it, and it's basically this drop shot serve, which I mean you do see in tennis, but it's
Right.
not a very common thing that you see, and
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you'll
Yeah.
always use it a couple times a match or something like
Right. Yep.
that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it is kind of fun.
I usually try to sneak that in once or twice. So I
Yeah.
always joke with Mozzie, like once we're no longer doing the shenanigans, we'll
Mhm.
know we're figuring this stuff out. Cause it's
Yeah.
like at this point, it's like, I
Yeah.
think he's rolling the dice too much. But he
Uh-huh.
looks over like I think it's all he's got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a super fun sport to pick up. I was
Yeah.
surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I think for me, kind of 45-year-old Jake appreciates tennis a little more than
Yeah.
like 20-year-old Jake.
Yeah.
I think tennis frustrated more
Mm.
than appreciated it. Uh,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. Lack of referees is tricky. And it's
Uh-huh.
kind of a tricky thing in tennis too.
Yeah.
I think you get older and you're just like, well, if I
Mhm.
don't want him to give me a bad call, I'm just going to hit it a couple more inches in and
Yeah.
alleviate all doubt.
Right.
But as a young person, that was kind of hard for me to get over,
Yeah.
uh, and also like the wheelchair basketball opportunities and kind of personnel were a little more robust.
Right.
I really enjoyed the Cincinnati wheelchair tennis crew,
Mhm.
and Jim Brackett is just like a huge influence on my life.
Yeah.
Uh, but with wheelchair basketball too, you kind of had this crew of guys, and I had colleges recruiting me, and it was a lot different
Yeah.
quickly.
Mhm.
Found a lot more success quickly as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
if I'd grown up playing tennis before I got hurt
Mhm.
and didn't have that learning curve,
Right.
maybe I would have been a tennis player. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so aspirations for UC and adaptive sports. You mentioned basketball. Like, do you just want to have like every single sport that there's a collegiate thing at, or
I think
what's your goals there?
I think a couple when I look at some similar goals that I have with the Dragons. because for the last maybe 5 or 6 years, as I've kind of like done the Dragons, I'm like, man, I want some of these kids to go through this program,
Mm-hmm.
graduate, and come back, and I want things built up enough to where I can hire them to
Mm-hmm.
like run that program.
Yeah.
So when you think of UC, like big picture down the road,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like my coach at University of Wisconsin Whitewater,
Yeah.
you know, I ran into him the last weekend, and he's like, dude, that's so awesome. You're starting a program at UC. Like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Now it's spreading. So when we have some Bearcats going to different universities and starting programs,
Yeah.
or coming back to UC and coaching or working there, that'll be like mission accomplished moment.
Mm-hmm.
Shorter term though, we wanna get our wheelchair tennis program just on firm footing in every aspect,
Yeah.
from like the funding, the strength and conditioning, the practice, the
Yeah.
competition.
Mm-hmm.
Similar thing with wheelchair track and field.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things I'd like to accomplish within the next, 18 months, 12 to
Yeah.
18 months, like I think are very controllable things we can get done right now.
Yeah.
And then also just kind of building that support and building that like funding base
Yeah.
and going into wheelchair basketball
Right.
would be next steps. And then at that point, having a model where students can come to UC and pursue their sport, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of different adaptive sports that don't have collegiate teams.
Mm-hmm.
But you could still, to have a place where college kids can come and get as good as they can at their sport while they're there would be huge. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you look at the sport of power soccer,
Yeah.
I think it would be sick to have a university power soccer team.
Yeah. That'd be
So
awesome.
I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities for expansion, but then
Yeah.
it's also like the thing that's right in front of you, like make that great
Make that
first, and
great.
then you can
Yeah.
build off that. You know, you can't be everything to everyone all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one thing that I appreciate about you, respect about you, is your ability to recruit. And I mean, it seems like everybody likes you,
Right.
except for maybe your opponents,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But I mean, it seems like everybody likes you, and you've built up a name for yourself that's like and I mean, just the new players that are playing tennis at UC, like
Mhm.
they're doing that. I mean, yeah, they're catching on and they're
Right.
liking
Yep.
tennis, but like I feel like they're doing that a lot for you as well in
Yeah,
the same
it
time.
took a little coercion.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you it's like anything, you know, when you are around a really smart person
Mm-hmm.
that can demonstrate they're smart and
Mm-hmm.
like explain the actions behind their steps, but
Yeah.
like there's no like
Yeah.
it's genuine, right?
Yeah.
So I think like, I really care about like disabled people and want them to be, I want them to grow up and be taxpayers and then be able to pay that forward.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think that's genuine and that comes through to like kids or other adults.
Right.
And I'm saying and doing things for a reason that I can explain to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind like being wrong or admitting
Yeah.
if I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no reason to like blow smoke if you're actually about what you're saying and doing.
Yeah. Okay, so within your first year of doing tennis and in track and all that, what advice would you give to a school that has never started a program before and maybe wants to?
Start with wheelchair tennis.
Okay.
That has been the easiest process.
Yeah.
Dealing with the USTA and the ITA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wrote emails like, "Are you sure there's nothing else I need to do?" And they're like, "No, we got you. You're covered. We'll see you at the national tournament."
Yeah.
Just a breeze to work with.
Okay.
And really have a good model and it's really well put together.
Great.
I mean, 2 players,
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
1 player and a community member,
Right.
like you're good. It is really built out, easy win for your university.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say universities and also students with disabilities that want to get in the sport,
Yeah.
grab a tennis racket, start playing, and it takes minimal investment from the university. But then you're awesome. Then you're part of of movement and something that you can brag about.
Yeah.
I think UC is really proud of their adaptive
Yeah.
athletics program.
Yeah. Right.
And it didn't exist till they were just like, yeah, let's do that.
Uh-huh.
And now it does. So
Yeah,
That would be my advice is wheelchair tennis. It's a pretty good one. Pretty
right,
easy one to get into.
right. And one thing that I want to say is a lot of people are apprehensive who don't know about wheelchair tennis or
Mhm.
don't know how to coach it. Maybe you're a tennis pro that coaches able-bodied people all the
Mhm.
time. And one thing I would say is the there's there's not much difference in strokes. You do a one-handed backhand, and that's maybe slightly
Right.
different. But the forehand's the same, the serve's the same. You might not throw the serve out in front of you as much, but
Mhm.
like as an able-bodied coach or able-bodied pro who only coaches able-bodied people, you can coach wheelchair.
Right.
There's a little bit of basic wheelchair chair mobility that you have to
Mhm.
learn,
Yep.
but you can learn 2 or 3 skills and
Right.
you'll be set for a while.
Right.
And then you'll learn as you go.
Mhm.
So I do find that there's almost like an apprehension to coach wheelchair
Right. Yeah.
because of that reason. So,
Mhm.
yes, it would be nice if you had someone that was experienced in wheelchair tennis already,
Right.
but you don't have to have that in
Yep.
order to get started. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of YouTube videos out there and
Mhm.
stuff like that that you could learn, or you could contact the USTA and they'll give you
Right.
drills. You can contact me and I'll help you out,
Yeah.
right? Like,
I was gonna say, hit me up. I'll find a wheelchair for you
yeah,
and hop in and
yeah,
play. But really, I mean, there's coaches could probably spend an hour playing in a wheelchair, and we
100%.
kind of get it. The wheelchair is not rocket science.
Right.
It's the strokes and like if you're a tennis professional, you've already got the hardest skills to
Mm,
gain. Like the wheelchair mobility part of it
yep.
is easier than you would think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super helpful and that journey on with the UC crew and
Hmm.
all that, that's so
Yeah.
exciting. I do wanna throw just a little bit of shade to Xavier real quick because
Oh,
they're our other big
right.
college,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they don't have any wheelchair tennis programs or any adaptive sports programs, so
Hey,
Xavier, maybe we can create a rival here and
I,
get a
I,
Xavier
I was
UC
gonna say,
going.
yeah, and I think I was about to say, let me get on solid footing with like the Ohio recruits first
Yeah,
before
yeah,
I go
yeah.
there.
Right,
But no,
that's
I think
fair,
at the
yeah.
gate, and I always point to University of Alabama. Uh, Started with women's wheelchair basketball, then had a men's wheelchair basketball. Now is wheelchair tennis. Now is track and field.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
You look, they were a little bit behind, but now you look at Auburn
yeah,
has a men's wheelchair basketball program,
right.
has a tennis program.
Mhm.
So that's a great example of like,
Yeah, yeah,
those rivalries. But yeah, but for now, University of Cincinnati definitely
yeah,
is better at adapted sports than Xavier.
yeah. Dang, how's that make you feel, Xavier?
Undisputed.
Yeah, right? If you have any PT students or anybody else that wants to start a program,
Yep. Yeah.
maybe in like 3 to 5 years once Jake gets his program
Right.
started.
Right.
Uh,
No, start right now. I will help you.
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's plenty
that's
of
fair.
there's plenty
Yeah,
of athletes that need opportunities
yeah,
for sure.
there sure are, yeah,
And it would
absolutely.
be think of our travel budget. Could be
Yeah.
we could
Oh,
we
oh
could
yeah,
play a lot.
we
Yeah.
could carpool and
We could
stuff.
just play each other the whole time.
That's
Like,
true. Yeah. That'd be like one of the things I'd like to see in Cincinnati is both Xavier and UC having a adaptive athletics program.
hey, if we each host a good tournament a year, that's like half the season.
Right, right. And have everybody come to you.
My wife would love that.
Yeah.
She would appreciate you, Xavier.
And we are hosting a tennis tournament, a collegiate tennis tournament here in Cincinnati,
Mm-hmm.
and we've managed to secure the Cincinnati
Yeah.
Open tennis courts. So that should be a big draw, and maybe they'll let us use it twice a year
Right. Right.
if
Yep.
Xavier and UC wanted to try that. But
Yep.
um,
Possibilities are endless, and then
yeah,
we'll get my Norsemen coming next.
yeah.
But,
It would behoove me to say shout out to Cincinnati Tennis Foundation, who I'm
mm-hmm.
working with that has
CTF.
helped
Yep.
helped along the way, and
Been instrumental in starting a UC program too,
yeah,
really. Like,
awesome.
I think back to last fall where I was just like, man, where are we going to practice? What are we going to do? And then Cincinnati Tennis Foundation was just like, come on with us.
Yep.
Zach will get you guys up to speed a little bit, give you a place to train. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was big stuff.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we're at about an hour and 19. How much longer can we go?
As long as you want.
As long as we want. Okay, let's keep going then. Okay, so talk to me about what keeps you rolling forward.
Uh, man, I really for one, I really like being alive.
Hmm.
Uh, I just have fun,
Okay.
and I really tend to enjoy my days day to day. And if there's something I'm not enjoying that becomes a pattern, I will just grind through it till I can
Mm,
eliminate that pattern and kind of do what I need to do. But yeah, I just find I don't know if I'm just lucky. I don't know if I'm predisposed to that, but I really enjoy the things I do generally.
okay.
Like being right here, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do a podcast. Like,
Yeah.
and today's been a great day. Nothing really
Right.
crazy happened, but
Yeah.
we trained some track and field. I had some good emails. Had to do some
Mhm.
office work, which I didn't love, but just kind of grinding through it. And
Mhm.
so that's one part of it. Another thing too is I think just kind of the idea of like paying things forward.
Mhm.
I've been afforded a ton of opportunities because like people did really cool stuff for me when I was young, especially in like the adaptive sports space.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think we can think of that as our society too.
Yeah.
Like all the good things we have generally are because someone came before us and made that good and passed
Yeah.
that on to us.
Mhm.
Uh, so now just kind of like a life philosophy.
Yeah.
I think you try to improve stuff and kind of pass that on for the next people. And I'm also the unique. Not that many people in Cincinnati have the skill set that we have that we're
Mm.
like really know about wheelchair sports.
Yeah.
Have worked with a lot of kids
Mm.
and seen that development a lot.
Yeah.
So then if we're not going to do it, who's going to do it?
Right. Yeah.
And at some point, someone was like, "I'm going to do that." When I
Mhm.
played for like the Cincinnati Slammers in
Right.
1999,
Right.
or John Kramer was running the wheelchair football program, or Jim Rackett
Mm.
had a tennis going in Cincinnati. So
Yeah.
I think that's you know I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. And usually day to day, I have a pretty enjoyable, pretty fun life.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with that sentiment. Growing up, I had a coach, Margaret Ferris. Shout out to her. She took me around to different tournaments and stuff like that. And I'm doing this because I want to pay it forward and I want to instill those values and lessons that I learned growing up
Right.
and that community and all that. So it's been pretty awesome. Um, let's let me ask you this: how can people get involved if obviously, and they're in Cincinnati,
Mhm.
they can look you up or look me
Right.
up
Yeah.
or just post a comment and I'll see it. But like, if you're not in Cincinnati, what should someone do to get involved in wheelchair sports?
I think there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. I know the bridge usually has some pretty cool volunteer opportunities.
Hmm.
I bet CTF does as well.
Yes.
I know with the Dragons, I don't unless you're highly independently functioning.
Yeah.
I don't really need another job because
Yeah.
when you're a volunteer, sometimes managing volunteers becomes another gig. Uh, but that's one aspect of it actually, like figuring out events to volunteer for.
Mm,
Another aspect is like from a social media standpoint,
yeah.
like with the Dragons, if someone can like our Facebook page and
Mm,
maybe even throw that other, expose that to some kids or some families that maybe have a child with a disability or
yeah.
whatever, that's huge.
Yeah.
And then a number one, which sounds kind of crass, is like donate some of your money. 'Cause
Mm,
that's really what it comes down to. And
yeah.
if you look at like CTF or the Bridge or the Dragons, there's always these different little fundraising campaigns,
Mhm.
or you see adaptive athletics. Like it's not cheap what we're doing, and it's not. There's no revenue getting generated. Uh,
Yeah.
but luckily we like I said, we've been super fortunate in Cincinnati to kind of find those donors.
Yeah.
But even if you're just, average Joe and you can throw $10 at this or 20 bucks at that, that's huge. It
Mhm.
really is. And I've been super lucky. I started the Dragons with uh, a really laid out athletic business growth plan with
Mhm.
never ran a nonprofit, never raised money, and
Mhm.
not really a plan for that, or at least not a realistic one. Uh, and I was really lucky. I just always found like donors, either individuals or donors with more money to give that really wanted to get behind a certain cause and had some really successful programs for that. But that's actually has yet to be a hindrance for me with Cincinnati Adaptive Sports.
Yeah.
But I feel like because I'm pretty upfront about, one of the biggest ways you can help us is to help us,
Yeah. Yeah.
provide some of the funds to do it.
Right.
Unfortunate, like I want to hire my first full-time employee for the
Yeah.
Dragons,
Yeah.
and I want it to be an ex-Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll have to figure out how to pay for that. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things you can do to help is spread the word. And
Yeah.
you
So one of the expenses you mentioned is maybe staffing, right?
Mhm.
But I think there's some other maybe benefit, hidden expenses that
Oh yeah,
you
yeah,
wouldn't get as an able-bodied player or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like that as much.
absolutely. I mean, so a couple different things. One, like every competitive sport, especially like the junior high school level, is
Mhm.
like a travel sport,
Mhm.
right? So it's like think about your kid's hockey team or
Mhm.
baseball team, which those are expensive. But then imagine that was your kid's only opportunity to play sports.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't like, my daughter's 7 and she can go to sports of all sorts and play in the volleyball league and it's like $50 and she gets
Mhm.
to experience that.
Yeah.
But then imagine like your only option is like you're going to be on this travel hockey team.
Right.
So that's a huge cost. And some parents in my organization are fine and they can handle that cost. But then think if that was your only chance to play sports. So that's one big one. Uh, and then the other is equipment
Mhm.
is pretty crazy
Real
because
quick, before you get into
yeah,
equipment, let me just say, there's one wheelchair basketball organization, or I mean,
yeah,
there's one wheelchair
yep,
basketball. I don't want to say team because they have different tiers. There's a
yeah, yeah,
women's team, a men's
yep.
team, a junior team, but like
There's one wheelchair tennis
that's
organization. Like,
yeah,
yep.
yeah.
There's
There's
one sled hockey organization.
one tennis organization,
Yep.
one sled hockey organization,
Yep.
and if you want to play other players, yes, you can play basketball against each other. But like,
Hmm.
if your top five wants to play a more competitive group,
Right. Yep.
you have to travel,
Yep.
and then you have expenses for hotels, and everybody mostly has an everyday chair and a basketball wheelchair or
Right.
a
Yep.
tennis wheelchair or a sled hockey, and
Hmm.
how much and you I think you're about to get into that, but
Yeah.
how much does that all that cost?
Wheelchairs are super expensive. And one thing to think about from like a parent's perspective, your
Mhm.
kid gets like most insurances, like one wheelchair every 5 years. And this is like, you work for Procter and Gamble and worked hard and you got a good insurance policy for your family,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That thing's going to break and insurance ain't going to cover it. And you're going to have
Mhm.
to come out of pocket, especially if your kid's running around being a kid. Like, you're talking about a $4,000 to $5,000 piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Think about what your kid does to his bike. This
Right.
kid's going to do that to their wheelchair
Right.
if they're living a proper kid life.
Right.
Um, so you already have like all these kind of expenses you're not really thinking about, which kids are
Mhm.
expensive anyway. But then with sports equipment, the basketball or tennis chairs are 3 to 5,000. The racing chairs are 4 to 7,000.
Mhm.
It really like it adds up quick, and I've done a really good job of just learning how to work on old wheelchairs to
Yeah.
have that entry level equipment for my
Right.
players.
Right.
But at some point, they get to the point where they're getting held back
Yeah.
athletically by their equipment.
Yeah.
So that's a huge component of it. And then there's not many well paying jobs in adaptive sports,
Yeah.
and
So true.
there's really not. And I think a lot of fields are like that,
Mhm.
especially sometimes the more fun they are, the tougher it is.
Mhm.
But the other thing too is like I always want to get kids through high school, and now the goal is to get them through college. But
Yeah.
then if they want to pay it forward like me, we need those opportunities
Right.
uh, for people with disabilities because they're going to be able to bring the most passion and expertise to
Right.
that field.
Right.
But you kind of gotta get that fundraising army going
Yeah.
to be able to make some of those things happen.
So, one thing I want to go back to is just wheelchairs in general. So, let's say you got a new basketball wheelchair,
Hmm.
um, and somebody else needed a chair, and your old chair was available. Um, what's the likelihood that that person's going to be able to use your wheelchair?
Uh, Not great
Yeah.
typically. However, what we try to do with the Dragons is kind of scale that up. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of a lot of my kids, when they get a new chair,
Mhm.
I'm always like, "Hey, what you gonna do with that old chair?" Because
Right.
they grow out of it.
Yeah.
So then once you kinda scale it up and you get, like, a group of 20 basketball players together where they're always coming and
Yeah.
graduating and new kids coming in, then a lot of times you can kinda solve that problem.
Sure. Yeah.
So on a one-to-one basis, it's not
It's hard.
super likely.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think the point that I was just trying to get out there was each chair is custom built to
yes.
that
Yep.
individual, and to get an exact fit
Oh,
is
man. Yep.
pretty impossible.
Yep.
And you can, as Jake mentioned, you can give them an entry level chair that's better than their everyday chair that
Right.
they can use until they get one custom fit to
Yeah, but it's
themselves.
not really gonna get them there. Kinda like what we
Yeah.
talked about when we were talking about, like, getting up off the ground in basketball.
Mhm.
Like, your chair is more of a prosthetic than a chair that you're not sitting on that chair, it's a prosthetic that's attached to your body, and because it's so custom made to
Yeah.
you. So, yeah, any hand-me-down is gonna get you going,
Right.
but
Yeah.
not get you where you need to go per se.
And that's a great strategy for just a place that's trying to build their own program is,
Oh, yeah.
you know, you have a 9-year-old kid that starts and gets a brand new
Mhm.
wheelchair. That kid's gonna grow out of it, and so
Yep.
maybe the next 9-year-old kid can use that
Mhm.
chair, and then it helps massively reduces the
Right.
expenses of wheelchair sports. So,
Absolutely.
um,
So, new coaches, learn your wheelchair maintenance.
yeah.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean, changing a bike tire
Mhm.
is fairly similar. You use the
Yep.
same tools.
Yep.
Bike shops also are really good at fixing
Yep.
things if you have the
Yep.
budget for it. But yeah, I mean, learning how to change your wheelchair is just, or I mean, your tires and do maintenance on it
Right.
is just a general independence thing. You know, it's like
Yep.
it's kind of like what you said is like you have them do it until
Yeah.
they
Yep.
know
Until
how,
they
and then
master
it's
it,
like,
then you can do it
you
for 'em.
know, and I know how,
Yep.
but like I kind of, I mean, I'm at the point in my life now where it's just like, here, just do it for me, and
Right, right.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. So, um, yeah. Anything else from an expense standpoint that you can think of?
Uh, no, I think a lot of it is, a lot of it's travel. A lot of that travel is also, like,
Yeah,
camps,
yeah.
sending kids to, like, different coaches. I've got an athlete now that, she's applying to go to, like, Illinois Premier Camp.
Mm,
So I emailed those coaches because I was like, one of the things is this girl's only heard about wheelchair basketball from me, and
yeah,
she needs to hear other voices and
right.
get other perspectives.
Yeah,
And if, in the able bodied world, there's a million basketball coaches
yeah,
everywhere.
right,
So a lot of it sometimes too is getting different camps in the summer,
right.
different clinics, and
Yeah.
it's like anything. The further along you go, the more the
Mm, yeah.
expenses you're going to incur.
Yeah, and just from the tennis world and the tennis perspective, there is, from what I've gathered, there's one tennis camp for kids in Ohio, and that's in Cincinnati, and then there's one in Grand Rapids, and then Chicago does like a pretty small one at their tennis tournament, but like
Mhm.
they're the as far as camps go, like they're pretty few and far between,
Right.
and you really have to travel for those camps.
Hmm.
It's not
Yep.
like you can send your kids to a camp here in Cincinnati for a day, and
Right. Yep.
they do these camps weekly or whatever
Hmm.
else.
Yep.
So yeah, and also like to get recognized as like an elite athlete, you kind of
Right.
have to travel, and you
Yep.
got to get recognized by those national coaches and stuff like that. So,
Yep, and
um,
put yourself in those positions to get the proper training and then get the proper competition and yep.
yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about you and your life and what you do outside of adaptive sports.
Mhm. So I am a father and a husband, which is like a pretty decent amount of my time.
Hmm.
Uh and time I really enjoy, but my wife was actually my girlfriend in 8th grade. And
Nice.
then we parted for about, like, 20 something years,
Yeah.
and then kinda actually reconnected when I moved back to Cincinnati around 2014. Around that time, I was, like, starting up the Dragons.
Awesome.
Uh, and then, my youngest daughter is 7, then I have a 25-year-old stepdaughter
Yeah.
with with a 2-year-old son, my grandson.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of family stuff, a lot of hanging out with my daughter, a lot of art,
Mhm.
a lot of hanging out in the woods, like catching frogs and hanging out in the garden and doing that type of thing.
Yeah.
But that's always super fun and always, one of the pick the challenging field really where, kind of like we talked about for every competition, for every camp,
Uh,
like there's a lot of travel and
yeah.
wheelchair sports involved. So I've been pretty lucky to have a supportive wife and a kid that kind of tolerates that
Yeah.
and doesn't give me too much grief,
Right.
when
Right.
I'm gone. So do
Uh,
that, and then I've figured out that, I'm good for a new hobby probably every, like, 12 to 16 months.
okay. Okay.
So, it's been fish keeping lately.
Fish keeping like in a
Yeah,
tank?
yeah, like aquariums and stuff. Little
Interesting.
fish keeping.
Okay. Okay.
Got gardening for a while, woodworking for a minute.
Okay.
There's been some kinda different ones, but I try to keep a good little hobby. But, yeah, as I've gotten older, I know that they don't stick, though, like
Yeah.
like, uh, like sports did, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this has been one of my, I suppose, hobbies
Yeah, yeah.
for
Yep.
for the time being. Hopefully, I can make it big. Let's say, and
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see about that. I'm not holding my breath, and I know it's
Yeah,
a long
yeah.
and a long process. So
Either way, it's good to just get all those skills you've accumulated your whole life and, like,
yeah.
put them into, like, a new discipline, and
Mhm.
you kinda get that cool, like, rapid growth when
Yeah.
you're figuring something out.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this: what's fatherhood like?
Uh,
Any
super
lessons?
super enjoyable, I would say.
Okay.
Uh, man, kids are for one, I don't know if you can really mess it up
Yeah.
because 'cause we're still here.
Yeah, that's
And,
true.
like, you know
Civilization is still
right,
around.
we're still around, so it must not be that hard.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I used to kinda drive my wife nuts because it was her 2nd kid, so I think she did know it was that hard.
Oh,
But
no.
I was like the dad that, like, wouldn't read the baby book.
Yeah.
Uh, but the best advice I got was, my friend Patty Cisneros, who's written children books, so is you would think a good parent.
Yeah.
But she was like, "You're just gonna mess it up anyway, dude.
Yeah.
Just do it, and then you'll figure out how to do it."
Oh, that's so
Uh,
good.
but I think the main thing is, I try to kinda like I was talking about, like, with my teams where there's,
Mhm.
like, a minimal acceptable like, there's a line, and
Yeah.
under that line is unacceptable.
Mhm.
Uh, I think a lot of that for my daughter is just being, like, nice to yourself and the people
Mhm.
around you and just kinda being, like,
Yeah.
be a kind person
Yeah.
and at least think about what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
I know a lot of times, she'll deal with a bully at school or something, and I'll just be like, "Well, what do you think? Like,
Mm.
what do you think happened at their house to make them behave that way? Like, they're
Yeah.
using cuss words? That's kinda sad. Like,
Oh,
think about it. No one's taught that kid how not to cuss." So,
yeah.
just trying to teach them some empathy, uh, but then also, like, everything by example.
Yeah.
I feel like coaching, playing,
So true. Yeah.
parenting, like,
Yeah.
do things by example. I know, my dad never sat me down and was like, "You're gonna work hard, and that's a very important thing you should do."
Yeah.
Never once said that. I remember before they bought their first home, though, like, him having his
Mhm.
job as a teacher and then his part-time job and then his couple side hustles on the weekend, and, I
Mhm.
just remember him doing those things that had to be done. Same thing with my mom. Uh, they never sat me down to talk about it, but they did it, and I was
Yeah.
watching and learning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, and I mean, you have some pretty awesome parents and
Yeah, yeah. Top
pretty good
notch.
support
Mhm.
and all that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Anything else from what about being a husband?
Uh, it is really, like, when you find someone you can just, like, vibe with, and that's kinda your person,
Mm-hmm.
it is so, like it is such a stress reliever, to
Mm.
be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
I was a bachelor for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
think I was mid to late 30s when I got married and had kids,
Yeah.
and, and, it's a fun a lot of times leading that lifestyle, but there's a lot that goes into that too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think when you find someone that's willing to deal with you, and that was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, find someone you like to be around and willing to deal with you, and then you know, just kind of put that in the equation, which I think it's easier and easier
Yeah.
as years go by, where it's kind of gets easier not to be as like self-centered.
Mm.
Because I think we're all pretty like self-centered till we're
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
then that kind of happens naturally.
Yeah.
Uh, and I also like to young. I don't know if this is good advice or bad advice, but to young athletes, I'm always like, man, hold off any kids, any relationship. Like if
Mm.
you really want to maximize what you're doing,
Yeah.
like you better wait a little
Yeah.
while. And I
Uh,
think it's a little easier in our society to put some of those things off a little bit.
mhm.
But yeah, if you're in your 20s and you're trying to be an athlete, and, you know, or you're a teenager,
Yeah.
like it's your life changes a lot, where
Yeah.
it's not exactly what you want to do. But I've been really fortunate to where I just got to be a
Yeah.
single guy for like 35 years
Yeah.
and do all the fun stuff, and then like luck into an awesome wife and
Yeah.
have like a cool kid. And
Uh-huh.
so I've won the life lottery,
Yeah.
Zach. To be honest with you, though, just like a lot of good luck.
That's awesome.
Which is why I also try to like not be too judgmental of,
Mhm.
you know, everyone's doing their best, and I've
Yeah.
had like every opportunity. There's nothing that's ever happened that I
Yeah.
didn't have a solution for,
Yeah.
and I think I'm pretty fortunate to be able to say that.
Yeah. I liked your perspective on um what do you think's going on in their household
Right?
to do
Yeah.
that? Like
Yeah.
that's just such a unique perspective that you know, I don't think I ever like I don't know. I'm sure my parents are great and I'm sure they had that conversation with me, but like, you know,
Right.
there's someone that would come into class and like first period, she'd like do her makeup and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, yeah, maybe something was going on, but I don't know if I necessarily thought of it like that. And
Right. Like,
yeah,
what kind of anarchy is going on in that
right,
house where they can't do their makeup there?
right.
Or, you know,
So,
maybe they woke up 5 minutes ago.
yeah,
You never really know, but I mean, I don't know.
maybe they're just a
I
little,
haven't been burned too often for giving people the benefit of the doubt
yeah,
enough to not make me want to do it.
right,
Like it usually works in your
yeah,
favor if you just yeah cut people some slack.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
Don't be a sucker,
Y-
but cut people some slack.
Yeah. Okay, so let me look at my questions real quick. Okay, so going back to adaptive sports, if you never got into a into wheelchair sports, where would you be?
I don't know. I would think I would have figured stuff out, but I bet it would have been like a harder road.
Mhm.
Like I was pretty much like not a very productive teenager
Mm,
or doing like very productive things or
yeah.
focused in a very productive manner.
Yeah.
Probably would have figured that out anyway, just
Yeah.
with like getting old and like maturity, especially with just kind of the support and like safety nets I had in place
Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
Uh, but I don't know, it probably wouldn't be as cool as it ended up being. I
Yeah.
will say that.
Yeah.
But also, you know, if you think about it, you take a lot of that support and safety nets away,
Yeah.
you know, where you're not afforded as many chances to like make mistakes or
Right.
no one's, you know, kids, like I see some kids now where I'm, you know, a coach. And there's some that I'm like, man, you're not going to have that many opportunities to get bailed out.
Right.
Like, you know,
Right.
like you're gonna have to hit the ground running a little bit, young man,
Right.
and
So
be ready for life.
pun intended, hit the ground
Yeah, yeah.
running.
There you got your rolling on
Yeah.
pick there. Uh, but yeah, I mean, so wheelchair sports has really helped me out quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm cocky enough to think I would have been fine anyway.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Do you think you would have found a disabled community?
No, where?
Yeah, right.
Name another one.
Right.
I think.
Right.
I don't know. I think I'm right about that. I might be wrong.
Well, I do know like the Spina Bifida Coalition of Cincinnati,
Right.
like they do like different activities and stuff like
Yeah,
that, but
yeah.
like
And they're awesome. But
yeah. But there's so few and far between
Yeah,
from
yeah.
that perspective. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean wheelchair sports changed my life. Like I have no idea where I would be. I might even be in a ditch. Like
Right.
no no joke, man. Like I mean, yeah, I have a great support system too, but like
Right. Yeah. I don't
Being coachable and learning how to do that, and, like, I don't know, just the feeling of working out and, like, working a sweat and working towards something and all
Right.
that, and also, like, like we kinda mentioned earlier, like, the disabled sports community has kept me more accountable to being a a disabled person that,
Right. Yeah.
uh, that
Yep.
than I could imagine, so
Yep.
than I would have otherwise, so, yeah, that's a neat question, so, what's no, I already asked that question. Here's a good one. What's one thing you wish more people understood about adaptive athletics?
Ooh, that's a good one. I wish people understood probably like the limitation of opportunity.
Yeah.
Like there's like when I look at my UC athletes,
Mhm.
pretty wide range of like abilities and talents and stuff like that. And some I'm like, man, that's going to be like an elite athlete, right?
Yeah.
But we're not all going to be elite athletes, but
Right.
there's no intramurals,
Right.
there's no club team, there's
Mhm.
no like different levels.
Yeah.
And I think same thing is kind of true like wheelchair basketball,
Yeah.
where I have some kids that are like they're going to get a full ride to college.
Mhm.
Others are just hanging out with their buddies, and it's good to have both those spaces too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I really want people to realize this,
Yeah.
but like everyone in the wheelchair isn't like the most amazing player you've ever met,
Right.
but that's all right.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like I was a Paralympian in wheelchair basketball,
Yeah.
but really worked 10 years to get to like to be able to play at like the highest level,
Mhm.
but like at the highest level, just like a role player. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Never won like a Paralympic medal. Never like there's a whole list of things I didn't do.
Mhm.
But then people want to be like greatest basketball player ever,
Mhm.
because like they it's like, you want everyone to be the most amazing thing in the world where it's like it's hard for them just to be like really good at it or it's
Yeah.
cool they do that
Mhm.
or just, so whether you actually
Yeah.
want people to really know the levels, I don't
Right.
know,
Right,
but
right, right.
maybe in a perfect world that'd be nice. It served me pretty well, like being in
Yeah.
Cincinnati, like little fish in a big fish in a little pond. Like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this guy's amazing. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I'm glad I'm not from like LA or New York with like
Well,
some
yeah,
some real stud Paralympians running around.
I would say, I mean, there's a lot smaller of a bucket, right,
Yeah.
of people
Yep.
that actually do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if you're a decent athlete and you work hard,
Mhm.
there's a good chance of
Yeah.
potential success.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. No, that's a good way to put it too. So.
and so I grew up playing wheelchair tennis, and I had the opportunity to play for the US and
Mhm.
go overseas multiple
Right.
times, and I'm super grateful because I don't think because of the able-bodied tennis, it's so
Right.
competitive
Yeah.
that
Yep.
I don't know that I would have had that
Yep.
opportunity. Like, would I have been decently high ranked? Yeah, but
Right.
not
Yeah.
high enough to
Yep.
be traveling to the world team cup and La Petite As and all that. So,
The equation I gave people a lot, especially like sports people, will kind of get
mhm.
this. But when I was in college, we won back to back to back national championships.
Mm,
With that said, though, there were like 10 teams. So
mm,
it's kind of like in collegiate basketball, like winning your conference.
mhm.
Yeah, you win your conference 3 times in a row. That's a pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah.
But it's not quite like winning an NCAA national tournament 3 times in a
Sure,
row. Is like
sure,
kind of on a different level. So
sure. Yeah.
with that said, you can only compete against the people in front of you and beat who's there. So,
Yeah, like, I could just see if, like, a whole bunch of disabled people watch this, it almost seems like we're minimizing what those athletes do, and, like, I'm certainly not, and
yeah, I mean, I would hope someone wouldn't take it that way, but I
yeah,
could see. I mean, if they did, I don't know.
yeah.
It's hard to say. I'm not that impressed by able-bodied people either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know, like, you played basketball, what, 5, 6 days a week for several hours a day, and,
Yeah, yeah,
you did strength and conditioning, and,
yeah,
I mean, you worked your bum off to get where you are.
yeah. At one point, man, I tried to do the like 10,000 hour calculation,
Oh,
but I think it was like 6 or 7 years. It
okay,
was quick because I
okay.
was getting after it.
Wow, okay, that's awesome.
It was full-time job-ish
Yeah.
or more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of work into it.
And just from a coaching aspect, like
Mhm.
you know how to coach super well,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons why you're good starting this adaptive sports
Yeah,
program
yeah.
is
Yep.
because now
Absolutely.
you can hopefully get to the point where you're coaching the coach and
Right.
doing
Yep.
stuff like that, and
Yep.
like getting them on whatever
Yeah,
game
yeah.
plan that you think
Yep.
is going to get them to win
Yep.
and
That's the game
succeed.
plan, but at any rate too, I don't know. It's almost like you can take someone's humanity if you're just like, "Oh my god, they're amazing."
Mm,
Like, you don't have to, like, I don't know, recognize that that's actual just a normal, flawed person. Like, you can just be
mm.
normal, and
Yeah. Yeah, so true.
it's tricky. I'm always like, anytime somebody without a disability tells me about a disabled athlete, they're,
Mm,
like, the most amazing thing
yeah.
on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I'd like to change that, though, because it's kinda cool that people think that, so
Yeah, right.
it's
So there's a TED Talk that I've talked about before. It's called "I'm Not Your Inspiration, Thank You Very Much," and
Nice.
it's this lady in a electric wheelchair who gets
Yeah,
up there and talks about like
yeah.
wheelchair porn, if you will,
Right, yeah,
or
yeah.
wheelchair inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration porn, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, wheelchair
Mhm.
inspiration porn, and so it's it's interesting because like part of me is like, yeah, I agree with her, but part of me is it like doesn't agree. And here's the thought process is um like if someone comes up to me and it's like, wow, you're so inspirational to me, blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, that I gave that person some sort of feels, let's say, and
Right.
hopefully they could turn those feels into something
Right.
actionable on their
Yeah.
end.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, I don't want to be your inspiration for inspiration's sake.
Right.
However, if if you think I'm inspiring for going in and working you know, at
Right.
my day job, just getting up in the morning, it's like, okay, great. Now what are you doing that how are you turning that inspiration in your own life and making a positive
Right,
impact in
right.
your own life? So,
Yep.
yes, it's maybe slightly patronizing, but it's also like, I don't
Right.
know. I'm curious how you think about that.
It's like a reflection of, like, the the situation able-bodied people have set up for us. Where, like,
Mm.
just if you're succeeding minimally, that's inspiring. Like,
Yeah.
what's that say about the opportunities and, like, what you
True.
has been created, you know?
True.
Like,
Yeah.
how low's the bar, and why is the bar so low, and
Right.
what do you have to do with that? And
Yeah.
maybe part of it just being like, "Well, what if I wasn't inspiring? Then would you just, like, leave me alone?
Yeah.
Tell me I'm doing great anyway?
Right,
Not,
right.
like, push me towards anything?" Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
With that said too, man, I don't want disabled people in, like, the pressure cooker everyone else is in.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. It's weird stuff, though. I just wish, more people would just be a little more normal.
Yeah.
Whenever I
Yeah.
talk to, like, school kids and they're like, "What's the hardest part about being in a wheelchair?" And I'm like, "You guys, man."
Yeah.
Like, every day, one of y'all is gonna say something super weird to me, when really all you wanna do is just smile and be like, "How's it going?" And I'll be like, "What's up, man?"
Yeah.
And we'll
Right.
keep it moving. We'll have a
Right.
nice friendly interaction, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I will say, and tell me if you have a different perspective on this, but I want people to feel as comfortable about asking me questions as possible about anything from my disability to, I mean, whatever. Like, how do I drive? How do I load my wheelchair in my car
Right.
and stuff like that? It does get annoying when you hear like the same common phrase of like, so you're wheeling past someone and they're like, "There's a speed limit," and stuff like that. But like, um, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I want people to take their curiosity and wad it up into a little bowl and shove it in a bottle and stick it way deep down inside where it won't hurt anybody else. I mean, I really honestly kinda do, though.
What about with
Like, people walk up to me and be like, "What happened to you?" And
Uh-huh.
I'll be like, "Why'd your wife leave you, bro?"
Oh my
'Cause you're
gosh.
basically asking me, like, just as personal a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I jumped on a train, like, 30 something years ago.
Yeah.
I'm over it, I'm good, it doesn't affect
Yeah.
me at all.
Right, right,
But you
right.
don't know that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't know what happened to me. It might have been horrible. It might have
Yeah.
been something I don't wanna talk about.
Yep.
And
Yep.
just like, your wife leaving you might have happened 30 years ago and you don't even care. You'd be like,
Right.
oh man, she walked in on me with whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
or it might have just happened and
Yeah.
that might be really painful for you. So like
Yeah.
the gall of people is mind blowing to me. And you know who I let get past this is like kids under the age of like 7,
Yeah.
6.
Uh-huh.
So you want the same pass that I'm giving some 5-year-old?
Yeah.
Maybe I am inspirational then. If that's like your bar
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of
Yeah.
behavior.
I think it's great for kids to be curious and ask, like, when a kid when I'm wheeling past a kid out in public, you'll hear, "Mommy, look at that," or "Mommy,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened to him?" or
Right.
something like that, and I'll always turn around and talk to the kid and kind of explain my disability and stuff
Mhm.
like that, and in I don't know, somewhat humorous way and stuff like that. So that's interesting. I do take a different perspective on the able-bodied perspective, or just the adult perspective and people
Mhm.
asking. I kind of look at that as like, if you ask me questions about my disability, it's you getting to know a piece of who I am.
Right.
And you're right, though. I have asked people what happened to them, and it's been a horribly traumatic thing.
Right.
And like I'll dig in a little bit deeper, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been like it's not been the most fun situation.
Yeah.
So.
You know what? I was just thinking about that the other day. I heard 2 of my players talking about like what happened to one of them,
Hmm.
and I had never even thought to ask
Mm,
because
that's
I
interesting.
almost just don't even care. I don't know what that says about me. I've
Really?
coached tons of kids. I got no idea what like maybe someone happened to me or what. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
It
Huh.
just doesn't really even register as something I really care that much about. I don't know.
Interesting. I'm curious about it. I like to. I almost like to ask everybody that I meet what happened to them,
All
and
right.
I have a little bit more of an open door to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
able to do that because we can kind of share disabilities or whatever.
I
And
mean, I used to just always tell people what happened to me too.
mhm,
It's only been a year or 2 ago since I've with adults.
mhm,
With kids, it depends. If I got time, I'll
yeah,
tell them. If
yeah,
I don't have time, I'll be like, I only tell people that when I'm
yeah,
paid to tell you.
yeah,
Because for a while, like, did a lot of public speaking, school assemblies. I was like, I'm kind of on the clock here. So let me
yeah,
tell you kids what happened.
mhm,
Uh, so obviously don't mind talking about it either. Which is
yeah,
the other thing too. But anyway, lately I've just been taking the hit of people being like, well, you don't want to talk about it.
yeah.
And I've just been like, I'm not telling you. And then just keep it rolling because I can't. And then they're always like sore subject, and I'm just usually just keep going because I'm like, it's actually not a sore subject,
It's
dude. Like
not.
I don't care at all. But I'm not going to give you that part of my day. I got things going on. I got things to do.
I I
Uh,
I'm
I don't
so
know.
I'm so glad.
I've I've turned on that like the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love the different perspectives that you and I
yeah.
share because we definitely don't necessarily see eye to eye on this
Right.
subject, but I get other people's perspective and why they might think that as well. So let me ask you this then. So I put it on. So like when I'm around able-bodied people, there's almost always an elephant in the room when you first interact with
Mhm.
them, and I put it on. I always look at life as like, okay, what can I do to better impact the situation, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, how can I get rid of that elephant in the room as fast as possible and make it so that whoever I'm interacting with feels comfortable? And so one of those ways is to throw out wheelchair jokes, right? Like, or another way is I'll just lead with, "Hey,
We're so different.
I know. We are. And another way is I'll just lead with like, "Hey, I've spina bifida. I can't feel my legs," or I'll just
Right.
make some sort of reference about like
Yeah.
not feeling my legs or
Yeah.
whatever else. So, um, talk to me about that elephant in the room.
I think maybe I'm very comfortable with their uncomfortableness. But really, because I don't ever never do that or feel the need to, and I
Ah,
don't and maybe it's I don't know. I was around nothing but able-bodied people for 13 years before I came disabled, and
yeah,
then, like, 6 years after that, after I you know
yeah.
so I think just having to move in those circles with able-bodied people is something I just had to do
Okay.
early on, but I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking about when I started this new job at UC,
Yeah.
which I was in like accessibility resources office.
Yeah.
Everyone was generally a little more disposed just to be cool and whatever,
Okay.
but I don't remember any of that. And I'm in new rooms with people a lot. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just power through or just let them sit there and be uncomfortable for a while. And
Mhm.
I don't know. Now, with that said, too, like if I know someone and someone knows who I am,
Mhm.
they could pretty much ask me whatever, fire off whatever
Yeah.
questions. Like, I don't,
Right.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're a stranger, I got zero time for you.
Like
I almost want to start bringing like the donation link on my phone to the Dragons or like UC or something.
yeah.
You make a donation, I'll tell you whatever story you want.
Yeah.
And you have earned some of my personal time.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it's Hendo. Who is it?
he's got the like leg story $5.
Yeah. Leg story $5 shirt. Yeah.
But yeah, like why should Hendo have to explain to people about his backwards foot
Yeah.
every day? Because people, you know, like what's wrong with you, dude?
I-
Like, do you think you're special? And that like this is one thing I tell kids too, usually over the age of 7 or 8, because they really can't comprehend it beforehand. Because sometimes I go to a school and just 30 kids will be in the hallway. What happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? And if they're old enough to absorb it, I'll be like, hey, man, I will tell you, but check this out. Did you just hear all those kids just ask me the same thing?
Uh-huh.
Like, what if every day someone just asks you the same question over and over?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you get like, I don't know, man. I don't know about how much time you got on today, but I don't have time to like satisfy the world's curiosity.
Yeah.
They're just going to have to wonder and be like, you know.
Yeah. So I look at it as an advocacy type of thing. So I'm one of those people that doesn't care, like whatever question you want to ask, like just ask me whatever. And quite like I think to an extent you don't care. It's more the concept of them asking you about it.
The subject matter bothers me not at all.
Yeah, exactly. Which is just an interesting, I guess, frame of thought.
The other thing might be the reaction too.
Okay.
Because you tell someone you have spina bifida and explain a little bit about spina bifida.
Yeah.
They're not going to be like, ooh, did that hurt?
That's
and
true.
get like all wigged out. Like you tell people you hopped on a train and they're like, oh, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah. That's not a story.
Are you over it yet?
That's not a disabled story you hear every day.
But there are like, I got shot.
Yeah.
I got in a car accident. Right. A drunk hit me.
Mm-hmm.
I got drunk and wrecked my car. Like, where do they think these stories are going?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell people I have a hole in my back. I had a hole in my back when I was born, and they'll be like, did it hurt? And I'll be like, I came out crying. Yeah. And, you know, babies, they cry after they come out. So, yeah, anyway.
I got it.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting. So, again, like for me, it's more of an advocacy thing. So, like if it's not me, then who? And let's get that education out there as much and as wide as possible.
Right.
So that way we can, I don't know, we can live in harmony, if you will.
I'm all about as much and wide as possible. And while I'm doing that, anytime I'm addressing a group, if I get a chance to work it in, especially with kids, I'm like, look, if you see something different, you're going to stare.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's curiosity.
But it can go sideways quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it can make you feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that person really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get caught staring.
Yeah.
And if you geek out and you look away and try to act like you weren't staring, you're going to feel weird.
Yeah.
However, if you get caught staring and you look at that person in the eye and you smile and say, hey.
Yeah.
And say hi and keep it moving.
Right.
You're going to feel good. They're going to feel good.
Yes.
You're going to be all good.
Yeah.
So that's like, that's kind of what I want to educate
when
the populace about. Because really, I want people not to be obsessed with people's disabilities or their difference to where you're just so obsessed with that you can't even see anything else, that there's an elephant in the room. Like,
but
I mean, maybe we're running around in different circles because I don't, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't think of like that phenomenon where I've been like, man, this is super awkward. I'm going wheelchair in here.
It could be me projecting. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily me projecting or like, I just know that they might be curious and maybe it's less of an awkwardness than anything. It's just like, like, I wonder how to interact with this person, like
Right.
what his disabilities like, does he need help, does he not need help, stuff like that, and
Right. Yeah.
like I don't know. I think too. One of the one of the places this stemmed from was I was out in public with my mom. I was like maybe 4 or 5 or something like
Yeah.
that, and I was walking around on either crutches
Mhm.
or yeah, I was probably crutches, but anyway, so um, there's this kid that was looking over at me, and I got behind my mom. I said, "Mom, this person's staring at me," like,
Right.
and and
What's wrong with that
I
kid?
was
Huh?
basically like, "Hide me," right? And my mom kneeled down and she pulled me out and she goes, "Don't you ever be ashamed of, or don't you ever hide from who you are."
Right.
And it's like, you know, and so I guess that was instilled in me
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
a very early age of like, you know, let them stare. And like
Yeah.
I personally, if someone's staring, like, yeah, maybe it's a little awkward, but it's like again, new things people are just curious about
Right.
naturally, and
Yeah.
that they want to look over and be like, "Oh, that's interesting," or "Oh my gosh, he just dropped down a curb. Like, what else can he do?" or
Right.
whatever
Right.
else, you know.
Yeah.
And so I look at it as more of like a curiosity thing than
Mhm.
be offended by a thing.
I do. I do too. If someone looks at me and says hi, or you know that moment though where people
Yeah,
either look you in the eye or not,
you're right. You're
and
right.
if they don't, I'm like, you just missed all my humanity. So why do I think I should show you humanity?
That's
Which is
interesting.
kind of
Yeah.
back to my favorite quote, which we won't
Mhm.
mention.
Yeah. 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 Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm very curious if anybody else has any thoughts about these two perspectives.
I am
Uh,
super because like
please put it in the comments.
we might got into some controversy.
Oh
I
yeah.
might have got in trouble on this one.
Oh yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with either perspective. I've
Yeah,
talked to
yeah,
both
yeah,
people
yeah.
with
I tend to
different
agree.
perspectives. So like, okay, let me ask you this then. So able-bodied person meets somebody in a wheelchair for the first time. Maybe they're not experienced with anybody else in a wheelchair. They don't know, they don't have like a good friend or anybody else that's in a wheelchair. Like, how should that person approach it?
Uh, I'm trying to think. Well, I was recently around someone with a pretty like significant disability that
Mhm.
I was pretty unfamiliar with and
Mhm.
hadn't really been around.
Mhm.
Uh, and just kind of played it cool. Try to just be cool and just talk to that person
Yeah.
and then ask questions as needed.
Yeah. Okay.
You can always wait and look and be like, "Can I help you with that?"
Mhm.
And then they can say yes or no or
Yeah.
whatever they want to say, and you can be like, "Cool." But yeah,
Yeah.
I was. It wasn't that long ago. I was kind of in that situation. I was a little bit like, "Man,
Yeah.
does
I
this person need me? Is there something I can do?"
right.
But then I was like, "I'm just gonna play it cool."
Yeah.
And if they ask, they ask. If
Right.
I slide it in to make them know that if they need it, I
Mhm.
got them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without being pushy, that's always weird when you
Right.
get over helpers.
Right.
Over helpers are tricky to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I
Like,
especially
please
feel
stop
like,
touching my wheelchair.
yeah, I got it or whatever else.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I think the main thing is anytime you meet anyone different, like whether it's disability or whatever, like just try to see that person and connect with that person. You'll be
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
If you're like wigging out or hung up on like this difference,
Mhm.
you're probably not going to have the best interaction. Like,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah, I think maybe a person that's not familiar with wheelchairs and they're not sure how to help or whatever else.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get into to one last thing. So and you and I have talked about this a little bit as well, but one of my favorite things to talk to disabled people about is the opening doors
Oh,
thing. And so like I'm for if I'm following right behind somebody and they open the door for me like they would anybody else, like I'm completely for that, but don't make it awkward. And it gets awkward when you open the door for someone that's behind you and they hold the door for you or reach over your head and they're like, "No, I got it. You go in." And then you get into this battle of, "No, you go, I go, you go, I go."
There's a physical skill to opening doors for anyone.
Yeah.
Open the door for someone in a wheelchair like you would a person that is the size of that door,
Okay.
where you got to get all the way out of the way.
Okay.
Act like you're moving a fridge through that door.
Okay. Okay.
But really, if someone's like smooth with it and
Uh-huh.
just opens that door, they're all the way out of the way.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Might not need it.
Yeah.
Might not, but whatever. I'm not
Yeah.
going to fault you for. I open the door for people that probably don't need it all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
of course.
When they open it and like their backs to the door,
Yeah.
like they're holding like 1,000-pound door back for,
Yeah.
like a submarine hatch that's about to implode.
And because they're standing there, you can't fit through
And
the
then their
door.
feet are in the way.
Yeah.
When like your big stinky armpit or whatever, and you want me to like go through the little like London drawbridge.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
So like there's levels to it. But if your technique is tight and you want to open a door,
Right.
I'm game.
Yeah.
But man, that can be some weird stuff.
Yeah. I open doors for people. Like I go out of the way to open doors for people. Like even if someone's like coming from like 20 feet away and it's like I could just go through.
Yeah.
I think it's fun to almost see that person's reaction.
Yeah.
Like it's just a social experiment. And that's another education piece. It's like, oh, this guy in a wheelchair is holding the door for me. That's very nice.
Yeah.
And I do it for you, you do it for me. And like it's yeah, go ahead.
I've got a speed at which I roll.
Yeah.
And I'll slow down. Like someone's coming behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll like slow down, but I'm making forward progress. And if you're not up to me, by the time that door gets there, it's shut.
Yeah.
But I will go pretty slow, like especially if someone's behind me. Like,
Yeah.
Try to keep that thing open.
Yeah,
See
yeah.
someone coming around.
Right.
But
Do you think it's patronizing if somebody if an able-bodied person opens a door when they're not just doing it like they would everybody else? Like
here's the thing. I'm really good at navigating doors. I'm sure you are too. Like there's a lot of manual wheelchair users that just have that down and it's whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's every able-bodied person's job in the world to like distinguish between the two.
Yeah, so true.
So if you're just doing it and it's not a big deal or whatever.
Yeah.
Hell, even if your technique's a little sloppy and I gotta go underneath your armpit,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like going to get too bent out of shape about it.
I love that.
Now, when you start to open the door and I'm like, I'm got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just ignore me like I couldn't possibly know what I'm talking about, and then you're in my way.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty irritating. But I'm sure there's some people that it's pretty handy to have someone like grab the door. They could get that door anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more frustrating. That's harder for young people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't speak to young women, but I would imagine for young men, like that stuff used to drive me insane.
Yeah.
As a teenager.
Yeah.
Like lower quality of life drive me insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that wheelchair sports gave me too, is like a group of people to complain about that with.
Yeah. Right.
Be like, I'm not so alone. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of depends on where your technique is with the door. But
Yeah.
I'm sure some people like, and every now and then I'll be carrying something or something, and I'll be like, sweet.
Yeah.
That dude got my door.
Right.
I'm trying to teach, and at this point, I'm teaching my daughter how to be smooth with opening doors. Like everything we do together, if she slows me down and makes me look like I need help,
Yeah.
she hears about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll even be doing something, and I'll be like, I'm gonna need you on point, or some AB is gonna ask us if we need help.
Yeah.
And she knows if someone asks if I need help, that she's gonna hear about it.
Oh, that's funny. Oh,
because she's throwing me off my game.
Yeah.
But she's getting pretty good at it. And
Yeah.
I think she kind of gets it too. I think she's like, yeah, man, those weirdos, I don't want them talking to you either. Dad.
That is an interesting perspective, huh? Okay.
Start running around with a little kid, you might change some of your.
Yeah. Interesting.
When your daughter looks at you, is like, why does that boy keep screaming about your legs, Dad? You might feel differently about that kid. In a previous life, you took 10 minutes with to explain the nuances of
Right. Oh man, yeah. Okay, so the open door philosophy. Everybody's probably heard that, but I definitely every disabled person I get in here, I'm gonna ask them about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing.
It is interesting. I tend to like to look at it as someone doing me a good, like it's just a good person, and you can look at it as like they're being patronizing as well, but like that's just not a good way to roll through life if you ask me.
Yeah, it could be I don't know, man. I think people wanna help,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a obvious, like,
Yeah,
that's a hard one to lose,
that's an
holding the door.
easy
Like,
one to do.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's wrap up with a few final questions.
Alright.
What's one question you wish people asked you more?
Uh, hmm.
Not what's your disability?
Not what's my disability. I'm good on that one. Uh, gosh, I don't know. And I think part of it is, like, meeting and I kinda like meeting people and, like, having, like, actual meeting people,
Yeah, me
but
too.
but I think I've had such negative interactions with this, I don't want anyone to ask me anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I can't I can't think about that as much, but,
Yeah, sure.
I like, you know, anytime someone, like, throws, like, a sports question my way,
Uh-huh.
like, if I'm, like,
Yeah.
at, like, a meet and greet or something like that,
Yeah.
that's always fun, and I've been trying to get better at, like, firing right back at a question with someone,
Okay.
because someone could just follow up with me like, "Oh, you played in Italy? What about that? What about
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
What about
yeah.
that?" Keep going. And I learned that a lot from watching, Matt our mutual friend, Matt Scott, and just
Yeah.
kinda watch him interact with people and, like, how
Uh-huh.
quick he'd fire a question right back to him.
Yeah.
And Matt is one of them dudes where you can just hit him with a million questions, and he's,
Yeah.
like, the most interesting man alive.
Yeah.
But I'd watch him interact with strangers that way and kinda, like, form a
Yeah.
bond with people, so I'd almost rather, like, get better at, like,
Yeah.
asking people those questions so that they
Mhm.
can. Because I don't as much as I don't necessarily wanna share stuff about I don't mind people
Yeah.
sharing with me about themselves.
Yeah, yeah, right,
I find
right.
it interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely like, uh, controlling maybe isn't the right word, but, like, just, like, if I don't wanna spend too much time on myself, so I might ping it right back
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
somebody else and
Yep.
just ask them questions.
And I like to talk about myself, so I'm assuming
Yeah.
other people do too.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah.
I mean, everybody likes to talk about
Yeah, let's go
themselves a
back and
little
forth a
bit.
little bit, yeah.
One of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I like just there's some fascinating things that people have to share, and like
Right.
I want that to be given out to the rest of the
Right.
world
Yep, yep.
and all that. So, and then the other thing that I discovered is some people don't get the opportunity to talk about themselves enough.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. So somebody texted me the day after and was
Yeah.
like, "Man, I really needed that. That was great."
Yeah.
It was just so
Yeah.
cool. I was like, "Wow, okay, an unforeseen impact
Mhm.
that this podcast has had." So,
Right.
okay, final question. Um, can you share a story where humor helped you with a challenge related to your disability?
Uh, let's see.
You joke
That's
about your
interesting.
disability all the time.
I'll make some amputee jokes
Yeah.
right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to think
Give
about
us one. What's an amputee's favorite restaurant?
here's the thing that, uh, what IHOP.
Yeah, IHOP. What's an amputee's favorite restaurant? IHOP.
IHOP. I know I will say this, I will not wheelchair joke with someone not in a wheelchair.
Oh, really?
I'm not giving no wheelchair jokes to any ABs.
Huh.
I'm not perpetuating you're not seeing me and just seeing my disability.
That's
Not one second.
hysterical. Okay.
And to be honest with you, if my disability makes you feel a little uncomfortable, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Because I'm not uncomfortable. You are, which I feel like gives me leverage in this situation.
So I
But
will let my friends do wheelchair jokes or give like shell out wheelchair jokes, but I've always told them. I said, listen.
They can get a pass, but that can't be all they have.
Well, that's true too. But at the same time, I've always said, like, listen, like, you can throw out wheelchair jokes,
Mhm.
but if your wheelchair joke is dumb, it's something everybody able-bodied person thinks of, or I just don't laugh at it. I'm gonna throw it back at you
Yeah.
and just say that was dumb.
If it's not up to standards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's got to be original. And my current housemate, he's able-bodied. He's so good at throwing just original wheelchair jokes out.
Right.
So,
I feel like those moments happen pretty often, though.
yeah.
And I'll, like, make some amputee humor.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm usually so dry just throwing them out.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, right now, I can remember people, like, really thinking that was funny. Maybe even, like, too funny.
Yeah.
Because they finally got to, like, get that elephant out of the room.
Like
But I can't remember what I said.
yeah. Why I've fallen out of my wheelchair and like I've just started screaming, I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my legs. And then when everybody freaks out, I'm like, oh wait, I was born like that. My bad.
You're good.
Yeah. I think if you have a story like this, feel free. But go ahead.
On a plane, we were when we were flying to Orlando like a couple weeks ago, we had the choice of, like, on a Southwest flight, which is I highly recommend any disabled people hop on those Southwest flights. You can almost roll all the way in the plane. They
Oh,
let you hop on first.
okay.
It's light work. But at any rate, they had like the bulkhead or the seat
Mm-hmm.
one back, and it was like a full flight. The guy
Mm-hmm.
was like, "You want the bulkhead?" And I was kind of like, "Yeah, I'll take this row." And it's kind of looked at him like, "Let's save the leg room for someone who needs it."
Yeah.
But he like didn't know. He didn't know whether to laugh or not. And to be honest with you, though, I was also just kind of being serious. I'll save the leg room for someone who needs it. I'm considerate.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. One of my favorite. I was at the Frogley camp and the Frogley wheelchair basketball camp, and this was when I was a kid, and I heard somebody say, "Oh, dang it, I forgot my leg." And those are just like, oh my gosh, that's hysterical.
Did they literally forget their leg?
They literally forgot their prosthetic leg.
Got to basketball camp, realized they had to pee.
Yeah.
Can't get their basketball chair through a doorway.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything else that you want to talk about before we end it?
Nah, man, I think we hit it. That was super fun to.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
We'll have to do like a wheelchair guy roundtable at some point.
Oh my gosh!
And bring up some of these topics and just see what some.
That'd be awesome. Just have a couple like controversial topics of like,
able-bodied disabled culture classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be great to. I think Mozzie would be good. You'd be good.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure we can think of a bunch of people, but
yeah.
All right, I'm gonna do my outro. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time and coming on my podcast. And I really hope this will be a very fun and educational time for people to just get a grasp of the wheelchair sports community, the adaptive sports community, and all that. So I appreciate you. I think your guest number is 6 or 7. So yeah, but thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome getting to know you over the years and all that.
Yeah, no worries, man. Anytime, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for joining the Rolling Forward podcast. If you like what you heard, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. I want to hear what keeps you rolling forward. Or if you have my next t-shirt idea, or maybe something you heard today that stuck with you, I'm for it all. Maybe even comment about what your thoughts are about the disagreement that Jake and I had. So if you want to see more shirts like this one, unfortunately, this one is not on my store, but it's still funny, and I love it. I did get it on Amazon. But you can find my designs over at rollingforward.printful.me. And if you've got a story worth sharing that fits the theme of what we're doing here, I'd love to hear from you. You could be my next guest. Until next time, keep rolling forward. Thanks, everybody.